Okay, let's do it quick.
Go sit down and watch.
Okay.
It's gotta be after.
Making him stay.
I didn't want to take advantage of the.
Oh, the safety thing? I know. Thank you, Kevin, for having my back.
Oh, yeah, no.
I'm like, oh crap, what's happening?
The other one is real quick.
I did do that.
It was on.
It was really loud.
She had a mentor and stuff. Like she. Like
I didn't think they were going to get me here.
She had 3 observations
You've
from
been found.
Is there an updated agenda?
Michael and her and Josh. They had to sit down at various points in time. She was not.
No, you guys have some academic challenge to win.
I don't see one.
Hire her in August.
Yeah, 3 of them.
Can you
Been
ask
there,
Marti?
done that.
Odd numbers, bad luck, man.
That part I was.
I laughed. I showed Abigail. She's like, "Do we even
Marti,
see
do
him in
we
the other
have the
kids' right?" I was
updated
like, "I
agenda
think so."
printed?
I have one.
Are you guys stoked?
Print it, or did they?
It should be a full. It should be a.
Yeah.
It was just sitting there.
It was cool to watch. It's cool to watch the pace at how fast
I
you
don't
guys
have
went.
one. I had my
Yeah.
folder.
Yeah. There was a few times you guys whacked the button and there was like this look of sheer panic in your eyes. I shared it for a little bit. I was like watching live.
Me, Marty, Jamie, and Beth. Maybe you don't have one.
No. Michelle has an extra one.
You know, my adult life, that never goes away.
Michelle has
There's
an
sometimes I file federal lawsuits.
That's okay.
And I know everything's right, and I know that it's locked in, and I go to press send, and I get like scared, man.
We're gonna
You know,
fire him
it's
for that
weird.
for sure.
No, we're not.
Yeah, it's a good, it's a
Oh,
good
7:31.
practical lesson. A lot of
Mr.
the stuff
Chenoweth,
you
am
learn
I on?
elsewhere is repeating. That teaches you form.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call this meeting of the Geneva Area City School Board to, what am I doing? Calling it to order. I've had too much caffeine again, everybody. All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Here.
Mrs. Krieg,
Here.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Here.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Present.
and Mr. Pierson.
Here.
Are we in compliance, Mr. Lillie?
Yes, we are.
I'm sorry, I need a minute. I have 2 different agendas. All right. Please rise if you're able and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. That's the thing. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Now, as you may have noticed, we have a contingent of first responders who are going to do for us a safety forces demonstration. Officer Cooper, our illustrious SRO. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. I'm sorry about a uniform. I just came from a baseball game.
Well, you're in uniform for that.
Yes.
Did it get rained out?
This is cool. That's cool.
Thank you. Evan Warren, are you here? Can you bring your family on up here, buddy? Come right up there if you want to, my young friend. These folks in front of you are members of our safe community, the Geneva Area Safety Forces, and Evan did something great just a little while ago, and we're going to let Sergeant Gonzalez explain it to you.
So, Sergeant Gonzalez, obviously we're here for him. He did something that was unbelievable. During Safety Town, we do all kinds of stuff. We talk about bike safety, we talk about bus safety, we talk about fire safety. We go through all these things throughout our community that what is important for our kids to know about. And during that, I teach about gun safety, and it's called Eddie the Eagle. And the other day, while he was at school on the playground, he found a gun, whether he didn't know if it was real or not. But what he was taught during Eddie the Eagle is to stop, don't touch, run away, and tell a grown-up. And that's exactly what he did. So for doing that, and when he went and told the teacher, apparently, they started singing the song, which is amazing. So I'm doing something right, I guess. So I know I can't sing, but, you know. So today, we're here to honor him with this. Signed by all our officers up here. Not only is he getting that and being recognized today, as he should, but all of the kindergarten and Austinburg Elementary will be getting a pizza party as well, complimentary of our chief. All right, everybody, one more hand applause for him. Evan, you're amazing. You guys. And hopefully we see everybody else in Safety Town this year.
Can we get Evan to walk by and shake everybody's hand? Would that be great? Also here are our football team who taught a little bit about bullying. We have our cheerleaders who were our hosts and walked around the kids. Also other members of our safety force. Can I get some here?
The high school kids put on a great skit for bullying. It's amazing. If you haven't watched it, please, by all means, come down there and watch it when we do it this year as well. It's amazing. The cheerleaders, the football players, everybody. We actually have the sheriff's department. They bring their canine out, and it's a big hit, obviously. Until I sing, you know.
Now, Officer Gonzalez is going to lead you in the Eddie the Eagle song.
Throw us the ball. Gary!
This is the movie we watch with everybody.
Songbirds in peace. Hey, what's this?
Are you gonna throw it or not?
Did you leave a backpack over here?
I thought it was yours.
Mine has ice cream stains on it.
Oh, good point.
A gun.
I've never seen a real gun before.
I dare you to touch it.
Touch what? Oh my.
Gary! It's not mine. I don't know where it came from.
What should we do? Let's take it to the police.
Let's take it over to my mom. She has a gun at home. She'll know what to do.
It looks just like the ones on TV.
And in my video game.
Stop! Don't touch. Run away. Tell a grown-up. Stop. Don't touch. Run away. Tell a grown-up.
What? Why are you singing?
She's our point. She's amazing. Everything there is that we need for safety town, she's the person who gets it. And she's amazing. So, Rhonda. June 24th. June 24th.
Thank you. Did you get that, Beth?
Yep.
Yeah, please. Next on the agenda, we have a presentation about athletic facility. I don't have it written down. Mrs. Krieg, what's the gentleman's name?
Mr. Hutchins.
Mr.
and
Hutchins.
Ms. Crosley. I guess I should have stayed for a second. Yeah.
Reach the cable. I just don't want to scratch the
So, thanks. Yes, thank you. How about now? That would be nice. That's, yeah. Okay.
Right. So I am Jen Crossley, the athletic director for the district. This is Kevin Hutchins. He's a dad of one of our athletes and students, and he's an engineer by trade. So we are going to present for the athletic committee that has, I think when we start, was that April, I think, meeting?
Yeah, April.
At the April meeting that we put in place to try to come up with some type of a facility concept that maybe we'd be able to move forward as a district to get our own facility here at our school. So our committee pretty much consisted of coaches in the district that were wanted to be a part of this. We had the band director, myself, Mr. Hutchins, parents, and booster members, both from Gamba and also from the athletic boosters, pretty much consisted of our group. Okay. What we're going to do is what we started off with. There's been many facility committees over the years that I've been here for 16 years, based upon different plans that the superintendents have put in place. Nothing's been ever got off the ground. So we took a lot of those concepts that people had, and with Mr. Hutchinson's expertise, and we kind of went shopping, as he'll talk about throughout the different, just our district, the county, but also other counties that everybody seemed to like as far as what their stadium looked like, what their stands looked like, what their concession looks like, locker room facilities, weight rooms, all those kind of stuff. What everybody kind of liked, we shopped around, and then with his program, we were able to put it to place. So what we're gonna do, if you don't have anything else yet, we're gonna kind of go through here and kind of explain our plan. We have a kind of a several phase type plan. We do realize that probably we have one shot at getting this done. So we tried to put everything together and make it most as cost effective as we thought we could. So hopefully you can see this well enough. What we're looking at, this is the school right here. All right, this is the current soccer fields to our east with the hill. This is the hill right here. Right. All right, so here's the hill, and this is Route 84. So that's what we're looking at. Okay. We decided to place this, the stadium right next to the school. We figured that was going to be most cost effective.
Yep. And by the way, red is our phase one, our preferred phase one. So that help you out with what you're looking at there. But let's zoom in on the stadium.
So the stadium, we have 4,500 seats, both home and away. We have an 8-lane track, an artificial field striped for both football and soccer. We have a band pavilion. For those of you not familiar with that is, that's kind of like at Lakeside. They have a pavilion on their, I think, north side that kind of adds shelter and also projects sound out in the right direction. Press box with a home and visitor filming bay, a home and away coaching bay, and then the main press box. Scoreboard, lighting and PA systems. Restroom concession that can function for the stadium and any other things that might occur out there. 4 locker rooms to accommodate rapid usage changes. The reason we put in 4 locker rooms is sometimes we have games back to back to back, whether it's from a freshman football game right into a girls soccer game. So we need to be able to have facilities where people can change and move through things quickly. So that's why we did 4, plus locker rooms for officials, which we have to provide with showers and so forth for that.
And So just to elaborate a little bit on the restrooms and concessions, which we have up here at the north end of the stadium. We want them up near the road so that we can double fence them. So, we can have them so that they're open for football games or soccer games or band concerts, whatever happens to be going on in the stadium. But then any other of our venue events, right? We have JV, varsity soccer or baseball and softball here or soccer. We could double fence them so that they could be open the other direction, keep the stadium off limits then, but still use those facilities. And then to elaborate on the locker rooms a little bit, so this shopping experience I was telling you about, we, talking with the coaches, said, hey, whose locker room do you like? And so a great example over here is the away locker room. That's basically Conneaut's locker room. We just, I downloaded a map of the whole state here, and we just swung over to Conneaut, traced their locker room, and and I hope so. That would be flattering, I would think. But anyways, we went all over the state to different facilities and snagged stuff they like. The home locker room, I'm not jumping you, am I? We want to put, at least our concept is to put over here by the existing school, by the locker rooms. And this image is really lousy.
So
I
here's
apologize.
this is our current locker room,
Yeah.
the wrestling room.
Yeah.
And then this would be the driveway
Yeah.
that buses go on.
But so in there we envision a double locker room, a weight room, and then some much needed storage for both athletics and for the band. And then we had, just kind of some nice entrances here to regulate people in and out of the stadium.
And our thought here was also for the home stands and or if visiting, if it is able to put storage under there for like the pole vault pits, high jump pits, those kind of things, storage would be underneath there. This concession here is just a restroom / concession. And the other one was to be the locker room for the visiting teams. So we would have two entrances, which is actually on my next. So we put in an entrance over here. This is a current parking lot right here. So we can still utilize that parking, but we would access a parking somewhere on this side for the team officials and or if we made this the handicap parking, whatever it may be to get into the stadium. And then we'd have our main entrance here for both visitors and home. Oh, okay, there, I didn't see him. There, okay. And then to access parking that we have. This parking is actually on the west side of the hill.
No, we have some on both sides, actually.
And then we have the other.
And honestly, there's a lot that goes into parking, right? There's zoning regulations and all that kind of stuff. This really just symbolizes that we got lots of space for parking.
So the road is, where's the road?
This is the road down the hill.
Right. That's what I thought. Okay.
And so we'll eventually get to this over here.
Right.
But on the parking part, I want to, we're proposing turf parking. And it's hard to see you down there, sorry. Prefer to make eye contact as I'm talking.
So this red section is what he's talking about right now?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So this happens to be Penn State's facility. This is the Nittany Lions field. Big thing, right? But they use widespread turf parking out there. And, for us, an average season's 10 games, right? 5 home games. It doesn't make a lot of sense to put a whole lot of asphalt out there for 5 games. We can go out there with a paint machine, stripe it a couple times a year. It is way more environmentally friendly, less impervious, less flooding problems. So I'm a big...
And then we can use it for other things too.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So I'm a big proponent of this, and I have a nice little brochure for it. But this gives you some idea what this stuff would look like in the finished case. This is what there's this membrane that goes in underneath that distributes the load so that when you run a wheel across it, it doesn't sink, it distributes out. And but probably more than you wanted to know about that, but it's pretty neat stuff. Okay.
So then, so we have to relocate the soccer fields, the 2 current soccer fields that we have here, Some might say, well, we're really not even using those soccer fields very much, but once we leave Spire, or even prior to leaving Spire, based upon the availability out there, we do need soccer fields. So we have literally 4 soccer teams, if you consider JV and varsity, that need places to practice, plus a band needs a place to practice. And also if, whoever's practicing on the main turf field, when they're displaced due to another game, they need a practice field. So we currently have a soccer field / football field on the other side, which the red is a replacement that would need to be revamped. Missing grass, there's holes in the goals areas, so it's okay for like a summer season, but we don't have the means to have our maintenance guys able to keep that up for the amount of wear and tear that it takes. So that's going to need some work, and then also we're proposing a practice field to the side of it so that we can move people over there, whether it's football, when we have a soccer game, and so forth. Okay?
Yeah, and ideally, we'd like this field here to be turf.
Yeah, which is our enhancement phase 1.
Yeah, but
And then over here, we also are proposing more grass soccer fields because as we take away this area, we're taking away our Geneva Rec soccer places. So our proposal is to add, it's just grass, it's just crowning it, it's just fertilizing it and so forth, to be able to provide more space to help get community buy-in and give them some place to go.
Yeah.
So because our aim is to share this with the community, true?
Absolutely.
Spaces for them as well?
So let me get to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so moving into our enhanced phase 1 is the blue. Okay, so what we consider to try and get more community to buy in, give the community more time to be able to use our facilities, because on a fall season, there's really no time to be able to, our middle school, Geneva Rec Soccer, the youth football league would really not have much time to be able to use any of our stadium with as many games and so forth that we have. So our enhanced would be to put in a small soccer stadium, okay, with a turf field. We're not talking the amount of seating, we're talking very small amount of seats, lighting, water, that kind of so forth. We do not need any plumbing over there because we can open up these locker rooms and concessions, bathrooms to be able to house that area. That would then give us 2 fields to be able to open up time for people to use, whether it's a late rec soccer game, can use that on an open night, and so forth. It just gives more time that hopefully the community will support this. Okay?
Yep.
And then with that is the, like I said, the football field / area for more people to practice on.
Yeah, and road-wise, we would, instead of this being a sharp left turn as you're coming down the hill, make it a T intersection, and this could probably be gravel. Hopefully, it's not going to get used a lot, but gravel with a cul-de-sac. We want fire trucks and so forth to be able to turn around, school buses, whatever, big vehicles to turn around down there. So, but yeah, these would be real nice over there.
And then go ahead.
Sorry, and this might, I know we just have our new cross-country course over there. We can wiggle things around as we need, either the cross-country course or slide a field one way or the other if we need to turn it 90 degrees. But we got lots of options to there.
It's brand new and
It's all over. It starts in here, it's over here, and it goes all over in here.
Okay.
Yeah, and I could,
So this would interfere with that? I mean, we'd have to.
in a minor way, that
Yes,
I
in
think
a
we
minor
could,
way.
we're gonna have big machinery out there. We
Cross-country
could
is
certainly
just
reestablish
low
it pretty
area.
easily.
So then, lastly, one of the things we were asked to do is to make sure we're looking at long-term, not just plopping something somewhere and then find out in 3 years we want to build this, and well, if we just had 100 more feet, we could. So that is our green, all right? So looking at long-term, we have provided where we could put a field house across the street from the stadium. It could be a field house if we were to get some partnership with UH, or
FEMA, if you design it for a certain storm, FEMA will actually pitch in.
So I mean, you can build anything you want over here next to the turf soccer stadium, and then you can put in another road. We can just add soccer fields. I mean, is lacrosse on our back door? Possibly. Those kind of things that we might have to account for. So it just provides a lot of space. We don't have to put any plumbing in over here, so we don't have to worry about a cost expense there. So the last thing to our main project, which I forgot to go over, and that is there is no water or electric to our baseball and softball fields. So therefore, those teams cannot use pitching machines. They have to carry water. We can't water the fields. None of those kinds of things. So, oh, you'd have it. All right.
Yep.
So we want to add water and electric to our baseball and softball fields.
So we want to leave softball and baseball right where it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's that? The blue is enhanced phase 1.
Yeah, and there's
Like-
there's a little key hiding up there on your sheets for you, so you don't have to remember all this when you go home.
Yeah. That would be the turf soccer stadium.
Thank you.
Yeah.
With a practice field next to it to move people for practices.
Yeah, and this original property purchase really had great vision because these are kind of placeholders, right? But it can be anything as that need develops to be more clear, right? So who knows? Maybe some NASCAR team moves in and we can build a natatorium. That would be fantastic.
Do it for Dale.
Yeah.
Okay, so point to me what the buildings are. So this extra locker room right here is a building, right?
Yes. Yep.
And then the concessions is a freestanding building?
Yes.
Stands aren't really a building, they're just connected to the.
Correct. Correct. The stands. Yeah, and then
You're just
one more
Yeah.
building right here.
Forgot
Yep.
your
That
pointer. There you go.
That's the other locker room.
Right there.
a double locker room with restrooms to the north and concessions to the south.
So it's got two
Or
locker
flip-flops.
rooms, there's three, where's the four?
Oh, 2 in here. So two
Two
here
in there,
and 2 in
two
here.
in there.
Yep.
And you think that's a better option than, say, scheduling the games with an hour in between?
There's no time.
That doesn't work.
No.
And,
Got it.
The
and we,
earliest you can start a game is 4:30, and even that's, most of the schools can't even get busing here till 4:30, 5 o'clock. So if you have a freshman football game at 4:30, 5 o'clock, that's why we play JV soccer here, because of time, so then we can start that game out at 7 o'clock, so we're getting them out at 9 o'clock. We don't want our kids getting out of a game at 10:30 at night.
What's our furthest travel time for our district?
Depends on the sport.
we,
Our independents are different for every sport.
yeah.
So-
I'd add to that, freshman football played at Orange, I'm pretty sure, this year. And the,
56 minutes.
the kids shook hands, did not have their meeting on the field. The soccer team, as soon as they slapped hands, changed refs, teams
And
on
that's
the
having our
field,
soccer team
meeting
start.
off this, meeting outside the
Agility's on the
stadium.
side.
Yep.
So we do really quick turnovers.
Thank you very much.
Hence the reason why an additional facility really
Yeah, and that's great.
would be great for our kids.
To have 4 locker rooms is a great
What, yeah,
solution to that.
correct.
Right?
Yeah.
That way
Oh,
you don't have to overlap.
and,
One
and,
can be in, the other one's in.
and you can't expect rival teams to be in the same locker room to keep the genders together either. That would probably be bad.
Well,
Don't say gender during a board meeting.
all right, so is that all the buildings? Locker room, concession, locker room?
Yes. And I don't know that these
Oh.
are our throws areas,
Yeah.
which are also in the fenced area.
Correct.
Those
Yes.
are looking at you. What are those solid red lines? Parking, never mind,
Yep.
got it.
Having everything fenced in from a athletic director standpoint is key for charging and having to manage who's going where.
Oh, you have to
So,
go to baseball and start charging for that?
not yet. Those would be in the end zones. We
Yep.
actually, this view here is at Exact Stadium from Lakeside.
Yep.
And their pole vault down here. Oopsie, what's
Yep.
that?
Oh, I was just gonna.
Pole vault's on the south, would be our south side. Long jumps on the north side. And
So remember the shopping trip, right? Here's our
Can't remember the hard
band pavilion here, and then high jump here, and long jump's actually in front of the band pavilion.
And the track material, what are we looking at? You want, there's a preference, right?
The all-weather rubberized style.
Right.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's what we're going for?
Initial discussions, I equated it to like a 5-year-old going to see Santa Claus. Tell him everything you want.
Yeah.
Think forward and think about every piece and part of this, so that we could, like, as Ms. Crosley said, that we can make sure that we didn't just miss something by 100 feet, and we could have fit in a whole nother field if we had just set it over a little bit more. So this looks amazing.
And the reason why coaches actually, we had the original, like, kind of home team locker rooms over here. But coaches said they kind of wanted it over here because even though we do have a weight room, it is very, very small. And also to be able to have phys ed be able to go over there in the middle of winter, be able to go use a larger weight room, those kinds of things, storage, you know, instead of trying to run all the way over here, heat that so we can use those facilities in the winter. If it's connected or close enough connected, then classrooms can use it. You know, there's a lot more use for it if it's close to our building.
So is it over top of something else? Like the white square that's there now?
Oh,
is that
sorry.
something existing?
That's the, isn't
No,
that
and
the
I
wrestling
apologize,
room?
it's just a really bad aerial.
Oh, okay.
Let me,
That's directly behind the wrestling room and
Oh, so
the,
it would sit,
right,
okay, got it.
there. So this is the wrestling room right here, these are the locker rooms, and our thought would be it would go right up in here.
Okay, that makes sense. And then would we keep the current weight room as well? Have you,
I-
haven't gotten that far yet?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all glass, so I don't know what you would move it to, but that would
Yeah.
be, I guess, up to you and the principals.
That's a freestanding building, right? That two locker rooms and weight room.
Oh, sorry, let me switch back, so, wrong.
If we
software.
could attach it, that would be our first preference. If you
Yeah.
can't attach it, then you can't. I mean, I don't know the architectural of that.
Yeah. The other thing was, you know, one of our criticisms was when you go into Painesville-Harvey Stadium, you're like bottled up right there. There's a beautiful concession stand and locker rooms right to your left, stands to the right, field right in front of you, but there's no space to move. And so we wanted to have a nice big open space, which also lent itself to having the bigger locker room over here and just restrooms off to the side.
And same thing with the entrances, like, I don't know, like West G, I look at, I love their entrance. They have one entrance right by their school, which would be like right here to utilize all this parking. And then they have another entrance over here by their elementary school that pretty much all the visitors use. So it, not that it separates everybody, but that gives you entrances and movement and room to get out and so forth.
And it's making use of current parking, not having to put all new parking.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This is outstanding. Thank you for this.
Sure. Thank you.
Absolutely
This
fantastic.
is what I need, a map. I need a map of how we can get this done.
So that's where I have, my next step is the next steps. I don't know what the committee can do at this point, other than turning it over to you guys to kind of make decisions. Some things that came up as far as funding, whether, you know, we start grant writing, who's gonna start the grant writing, you know, who gets permission to do those kinds of things. Maybe look at a partnership with St. John. I mean, ultimately, we want this to be our facility, but St. John also uses Spire, but they do have soccer, they do have football, so therefore it becomes even more scheduling and so forth, but depending on what they will offer you or funds, just as a thought maybe. And then, what was the other one? That was it. So, how do we move forward?
So I'm thinking at this point, we need to seek engineers that, I know that's what you do by trade, but should we start focusing on a company that can provide us some actual numbers and sketches to say this is what we want so we can get an idea of where to go from here?
And what the price tag might
And
be?
what prices are gonna look like?
That certainly would be a very educated next step. I
Okay.
agree, yes. And,
So who facilitates that?
yeah, that would be you. And
I think there's
That's
no
on
way.
us.
yeah,
How you go about
and
that?
I don't think I would
So,
recommend going to detailed design at this point. I think, you know, this is a
Absolutely.
conceptual design,
Yeah.
but you can, I mean, at the very least, you want to know, like, closest million, right?
Correct.
I mean, so,
which will change in 3 weeks.
correct, but to put it in perspective, you know, Jefferson built 2018-ish, and we're 3-ish million.
Right.
So, you know,
And I think Pinkerton built and was 9 million this year, so.
Yeah, so my guess is that price has doubled since then. We're looking at a little bit larger facility than theirs.
And I think it's good to know as well what number we're looking for, because when it comes to grant writing, there's a lot of ways that we can use this facility to meet educational needs, which opens up a whole nother pathway for grant writing. You know, as Ms. Crosley said, you know, if you want to take PE classes out, we had talked about a few examples about how that space could be used as part of the education. I'm thinking of graduation. Here's another event that could happen right here on site that we would have the facility to do it with. But, you know, I've kind of nosed around as well, looking to see, there's a lot of great grants out there. Grand Valley just got one from the NFL for turf. But we would need, grant writing is very specific, and there's definitely a language that they're looking for when you apply for grants. So I've written a few. I just found one I was telling Ms. Crosley today about something to line the fields with that would be actually controlled by an app. But there's tons of those opportunities out there, and we would need to form, you know, a group of people that are very strong in finding those opportunities, and then a committee of people that can support them with, you know, editing, going back, looking it over, and making sure all our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed, and we can, you know, get the maximum dollar amount before we have to say we need this much money. The St. John idea is fantastic. Good job. That was a fantastic idea. And then the other piece of it that I think we need to consider is what Mr. Hutchins mentioned with FEMA. Will you talk a little bit more about that so they understand what that is?
Sure. So that more applies to the field house, but you know, FEMA is always looking for big facilities that they can source in a disaster situation, and they will contribute heavily, is what I've been told. When I was working with our church to build a new facility, we looked into this. But your building has to be designed to certain standards. It has to be, you know, for certain wind speeds and all that kind of stuff, snow loads. But it needs to be the place the community can come when there's a disaster. So this is the place that you're going to see on the news with all the cots and so forth. But, you know, a field house would be fantastic for that, right? I mean, it would be a great resource for the town, too.
And just thinking of all the other ways that could be utilized by other teams here when it's not going to be part of, you know, a FEMA operation.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and let's hope that's never,
As
but,
a mom,
yeah.
you know, somebody of a cheerleader, like, they could use that for, you know, tumbling and practice. I mean, there's just, the list is endless as to what that could be used for.
Speaking of that, who's here for POD? They still call it Principles of Democracy. I'm kind of old now.
Do they still call it that? What's it called?
So this is actually a really good opportunity. I really like that you looked at the infrastructure angle, because there are multiple infrastructure angles. In fact, so much so that trying to get our heads around the grant writing or find applicable grants is pretty intense. There's ones for using gravel causeways to help alleviate, in the back of this land was all watersheds. Watersheds take really gross water with really heavy metals that'll mess you up. Those sink down over a period of time. Sludge goes over it, and they help kind of clean, like, you know, kidneys. And they do a really good job of getting some of the gross stuff that goes on the railroad tracks and flows through. I don't know if you guys know this, 84 is at the water line. It helps suck some of that stuff out of the water supply. When you look at things like infrastructure, water, FEMA, disaster protection, as well as allowing the government or other entities in emergency and relief efforts, you can get a lot of money. There's a lot of grant money on the table, way more than 6 people can research. So if that's something that you want to help with, I'd be more than happy to show people methods of finding these grants and just kind of finding what's the law, what are the rules that we need to follow, and how does this apply to us? And if we could even just get a concentrated list of 10 grants that we could write, you know, that'd be a great way for students to get volunteer hours. If you want to learn research, I know Westlaw really is just super exhilarating, but if you ever want to take the plunge and learn what the real encyclopedias are about, you can always do that. But it's also a very great learning resource, because it gets you away from kind of being throttled by Google and being shown advertisements. It gives you a tool on how to use key citations. You don't know what those are, but you're going to be really excited when you figure it out. And when you take those laws and figure out the grant writing that goes into the infrastructure, you allow this not just to be a soccer field. Because I was in band, right? So we all know how this goes. Soccer gets a new field. It's going to be run down in 5 years. We're going to have, you know, a new football field, and half the people are going to complain, half the people are going to love it. it's going to have some utilitarian use. But what if we could take our disabled younger brother or friend to their first football game and watch that home game versus someone else? And we don't have to pick up their wheelchair, and we don't have to go make sure that we can haul them up and down with specialized seating all out of our own pocket, but instead we just move a little flat surface and they give us $10,000 because no one else is taking that into consideration. If I could ask the community, because a lot of you have a lot more avenues to research these things, to kind of spin up ideas that you think are good, we'd be completely open to hearing these for grant writing. So thanks, guys.
Anything else for the good of the order? Thank you, Ms. Crosley. Thank you, Mr. Hudson. Sure. Very nice. Jennifer, can I get pictures that are small?
Like it?
Just so it's more visual.
No, just like when you do it up. Can I get a big part of that or no?
Like 8 by 11. Yeah.
Like just the
regular
stadium
size?
No. I want like a blown up piece of this. Oh, yeah. A blown up piece of this.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we have our Soaring Eagles. Mr. Riley, gonna handle that?
Yes, I'm going to handle that. Thank you, Marty. So in continuing what we've been doing for the last few years of recognizing students, over the course of each month, we've taken time to recognize the students at the various buildings for displaying qualities of our Soaring Eagles that we aspire to each and every day that we are here. So at the second semester, the second half of the year, we will take some time tonight to recognize those students that have been recognized as a Soaring Eagle in the buildings for the second half of the year. So if I can have the administrative team come on up front to the stage, board members, if you'd like to join us on stage as well. Mrs. Porcello, if you could go off to the side over there. So the students, when we call your name, many of you are here. If you could just go over to that side of the auditorium. Mrs. Porcello, make sure you get up to the stage, okay? And we'll go from there.
Did everybody go but me? I'm going. Okay.
Okay, these are in no particular order, so I'm just going to call them off as I have them. Lincoln Anderson. Miranda Black. Olivia Chadwick. The ballerina of the ball. Perhaps the best dressed Soaring Eagle we've had here, folks. Very nice. Adeline Davis. Gavin Dawes. Autumn Gossett. Cayman Cripple. Kane Cecil. Okay. Brandon Sisler. Gerald Delise Vincennes Cruz. Ella Walker. And we had a handful of students that, due to work schedules, obligations, soccer practices, or whatnot, could not be here today. I don't believe they're here, but I'm going to call their names off anyway, anyhow, just in case they were able to make some adjustments. We had Chloe Dodge, Gwen Kyle, Adriana Shannon, Bria Lewis, Grace Andrews, Cash Brooks, and that is all. So congratulations to all our Soaring Eagles.
Joe, you're not staying for the rest of the meeting? Uh-huh. I see how you are. Bye. Any correspondence?
I have none.
I have done.
That was easy. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from the April meeting. Can I get a second?
So moved.
Or moved in a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
Treasurer's financial report?
Moved.
Anything new? I need a motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Anything you need to tell us, Kevin?
No, we'll have a 5
All right.
presentation.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg.
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
And Mrs. Cybulski.
Yes.
Informational items. Current investments, some donations.
Approval of invoices.
Oh, I apologize. I need a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved.
Second.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski.
Yes.
And Mrs. Krieg.
Yes.
Now informational items.
Okay, you see some donations there from After School Discovery for Geneva High School's first place in the 2023 Fall Tree ID Competition and second place in the 2024 Spring Wildfire ID Competition. And then every year, the Fraternal Order of Eagles donates $5,000 for 4 scholarships to graduating seniors. So,
Very nice. Mr. Pierson, legislative report, please.
Yeah, so we only really have 3 things here that we've been looking at. Looking at the SB 128, we are talking about these things called vouchers, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. To be fair, I haven't asked Kevin, and I'm sure he could tell me in like 2 sentences exactly what they are. But there's a lot of controversy over cashing those in, private school versus public school. A Miss Catherine Ingram in the Ohio Senate has taken kind of a preface to preventing what happened with the voucher program ever happening again. Now, each K-12 community school that has a for-profit operator, they are proposing that whether it's a local K-12, whether it is a college, a barber school, a trade school, cosmetology, they have to post specified notice about the for-profit status. Additionally, they're going to have to disclose on their websites in a specific format, actually. They outline the font size, the font type, where it has to be located on the webpage, and it has to say for-profit. They're trying to propose this so people don't go into thinking that they're getting the same accreditation, regional versus national, where sometimes your degree doesn't hold the actual certification that it needs. Catherine has been holding hearings on this. All 3 of the ones I'll talk about were touched on May 7th, which is why they're on this report. You're going to be like, December 23, this doesn't make sense. They're still amending it and listening to officials, professionals, people in the industry regarding where they want to go with this. I actually liked a lot of the language I saw. In application to us, there's not really too much. We kind of play nice with a lot of the private institutions around here. When we look at the siphoning of state money, however, this makes it a lot more clear where it goes to. You can't name a school the Science Public School of Public Knowledge, and it's actually a private institution that is getting private money, public money. Second, we have House Bill number 147. This is a proposal. It was very interesting to try to wrap my head around this one. This was proposed by a local House member, Sarah Arthur Fowler. My analysis is it shows certain licensees in the state of Ohio. If you have a certificate in autism and other alternative learning programs to supplement a master's degree, you'd be able to teach without a teaching certificate, and you would be basically observed as having a teaching license. The proposal only allows it to be in certain districts that they label high performing, end quote. There is no specification on what high performing truly is. I'm hoping that we get some guidance on it. It requires school districts, ESCs, charter non-public schools to file a report with the Superintendent of Public Instruction. If any licensed employee who retires during their disciplinary investigation for misconduct occurs, previously passed legislation said if someone had resigned or quit during the investigation, so now we're going to add retired onto that to make sure that all the bases are covered. It requires school districts, educational service centers, and other managing administrative agencies, I guess is what I'll call it. It says licensees or licensors, but that's very broad. being removed from the list of eligible substitute teachers because, and I quote, "it has been reasonably established or determined the employee committed an act unbecoming of the teaching profession," end quote. Again, no guidance there. So it's not if you violate a law, it's not if you violate section 4112 of the ORC, you lose your license. It's if you conduct an act unbecoming of the teaching profession, then you get your license revoked. It also requires the State Board of Education to revoke the license of an individual who is convicted of prostitution. It doesn't list what ORC, section, codification, or relevant law that would occur in, but it does make an exception if the individual was coerced. Definitely the strangest proposal of any type of bill I've ever seen proposed. I'm hoping that because it's local, some of our local legislators will kind of button up and make this a little bit more professional, but quite frankly, it's embarrassing to read a bill that talks about nothing but discipline and then ends with, "and prostitution so long as you won't coerce." These are the same people that say that teachers talk too much about sexual activity in school. This made no sense to me. It was incoherent and seemed like it was sponsored for the sake of being sponsored. I don't think I've ever talked as negatively about a piece of legislature in my life. And if you know my thoughts and opinions on Woodrow Wilson, that's a miracle. Finishing up here, we're going to go back to the Senate with Catherine Ingram. She is talking about requiring the State Board of Education, when issuing educator licenses, to specify whether it is going to be, let's say pre-K, grades 5, 4 through 9, grades 7 through 12. Geneva has an awesome program where we have a lot of K-12 reading endorsements, math endorsements, special needs endorsements. We have people that have studied dyslexia far before the state came in and cracked down and said, you guys got to figure it out. We have been, even with the wavering state standards, far ahead of the curve when it comes to reading and math. So teachers, OPSI, assistants, aides, bus drivers, everyone who picks up that piece of paper and understands how to read it, you are further ahead than most people in these districts. They're now writing laws to try to get people to follow what we do as an institution and have for the better portion of 30 years. This bill requires the State Board of Education, when issuing residential, professional, senior, lead professional educator licenses, to specify whether the educator is licensed to teach grades pre-K through 5, 4 through 9, or grades 7 through 12. Now, some of you who have taught for a long time are like, well, wait a second, this had existed for years and years before. You're correct, it was suspended during COVID. This is HB 35, previously as amended, being reinstituted. You're gonna see this Senate bill compete against that everyone with a master's degree can teach bill, so we can expect some kind of looming battle in the state legislature with that. Again, I know that's really exciting stuff, but be on the lookout. We're also going to have the same applications. There are current professionals looking at pre-K through 8 in grades 6 through 12, as well as the K through 12 endorsement reading, K through 12 endorsement math, plus however many credits you guys can get now. I think 30, but usually when you guys are talking about that, I'm on another plan, and I don't understand the licensure that goes into that. I've been taught by many good teachers here. But if you have any concerns, especially Ms. Portello, if you think that this affects us in any way, let us know, because I'm not smart enough to determine that. But if it's something we can get it ahead of in order to equip the teachers with the things that the admins as well as the students who need these services, can benefit from, let me know, and I'll do my best to bring it to everyone. And that's the legislative report.
Thanks, Mr. Pierson. Mrs. Ortiz, ATEC, please.
Yes, on April 27th, ATEC took first place in the robotics competition. Turbo, when he got into the cage, was pretty amazing. So you can watch it all online. It's available for viewing if you're interested. The events coming up, the senior awards ceremony is Friday, May 24th at Lakeside. And then our next board meeting is not till Monday, May 20th. So short and sweet.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Substitute superintendent, please.
Okay, so we have, before we get into the administrative, the principal and the supervisor's report, just a couple of items on my end. State tests, preliminary state tests started to get released just yesterday. They released the they released the math, science, and social studies test scores across the state, English language arts will be released preliminarily tomorrow. When I say it's preliminary, that means there are some, I guess the state calls it some cleanup that they need to do. Perhaps these students started testing with us in a district and moved to another district during the testing period. They need to move the scores around and kind of do some different things like that just to make sure everything is nice and clean, is what they kind of call it. But preliminarily, out of the 13 state indicators that were reported, we saw an increase of 7 out of those 13. And when those increases were occurring, and I did attach that to the board members for your perusal, they were significant improvements of 10, 12, 13%. So that was nice to see. We did decrease in 3 of the areas, but and we had 3 areas out of the 13 that were similar to what we had last year. Between our district and the state, 9 out of the 13 areas that the state has released so far that we were higher than, which is a nice progression that we're going. We're not where we want to be yet, by no stretch of the imagination, but I will take the growth moving ahead as we can, especially if we can keep making the gains by what we did this past school year. But again, this is preliminary. Hopefully, by the end of June, we'll have some more solid numbers to be able to share. The School Lunch Hero Day was celebrated, recognized on May 3rd by our food service staff. They received some thank you cards from the students and some School Lunch Hero coloring pages. Just as a knowledge base for the community here, our food service department serves over 24,000 breakfast and lunch meals to students each month during the school year. So kudos to the entire cafeteria staff, as well as Michele Papick, who is the supervisor of that. As a district, we recognize Staff Appreciation Week, May 6th through May 10th, and perhaps the administrators will share a little bit of some of the things that they did in their buildings, but it was well received, and we had some community groups that helped out, parent groups, booster groups, volunteers that make it very, very successful. On my end, today I had the chance for the first time to attend the Geneva Rotary Club's 2024 Breakfast of Champions. I had a chance to talk with Mr. Kujala, who gave the speech, I guess today, a keynote speech. He really recognizing 100 years of Rotary, but this was the 28th year of this event. And he was able to go back and kind of tell me a little bit of the history of the different places it's been and what they did during COVID and all that. So that was really neat to see.
Mr. Eric Kujala or Jerry Kujala?
Mr. Eric Kujala.
Eric Kujala.
But I'm sorry about that. And but he shared his top 25 lessons and thoughts with the group because, as he said, he was really never invited to the top 25 when he was in school, and he wanted to share some of his wisdom. But some of his thoughts were, he told the students, stay in the moment, be mindful of social media, don't get sucked into what you're reading on Facebook and Twitter and all that. Be cognizant of that. Dress for success. Try to always volunteer and support one another. Apologize. Don't hold grudges. He admittedly said there were some people in his life he wished he would have apologized to, and they're still holding a little bit of a grudge. So he kind of reflects on that in a different way. But his number one that he recommended was find a balance in life, whatever that may be, if it's between work and home or your family and what you're doing in your career, just to kind of find that balance, whatever that balance may work for you, but to find it and then keep it close to you at heart. I always think that the final end of the school year here is kind of a chance for celebratory events and final activities. We always have the rite of passage ceremony like tomorrow. We have scholarship awards programs, obviously commencement coming up, field days, all kinds of awards programs. And we celebrate what we've done throughout the course of the year, which is great, but it's also a chance for new beginnings. It's a chance for the 8th graders to realize they're coming up to the high school next year for that transition. It's a chance for the kindergartners to move from kindergarten up to the 1st grade or from preschool to kindergarten. It's a chance for the moms and dads of the area to realize that their children are growing up slowly but surely, and someday they will be walking across the stage for commencement, even though right now they may be in just kindergarten or 3rd grade or whatnot. So it's a chance for new beginnings, and I think a lot of times when we're celebrating everything that's happening along the way, we reflect on what we've done. I would encourage everybody to stay in the moment, as Mr. Kujala said, and think ahead and kind of remember where we want to go as a district. So appreciated that. At this point in time, I'll have some of the administrators come up. Mr. Markajon, you are first on deck, please.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. My microphone might be turned up a little bit high, I'm not sure. I will try to talk.
Mr. Chenoweth, thank you.
Turn them off.
Like,
Sorry.
like way back here?
Turn him off. Mute.
My report starts off with our fifth graders. Mrs. Cozy arranged with Mrs. Kaufman, who came in and had donated flowers, and the fifth graders, in connection with Mrs. Cozy, Mrs. Nugent, and Mrs. Blood, put together arrangements for Rayanne Nursing Home. So these fifth grade students, and some of them probably never put together a floral arrangement before. They took so much pride in doing this and putting this together for the members of Rayanne Nursing Home. So some of the students were collecting vases so that there could be a vase that went along with their arrangement, and these were given out then by Mr. and Mrs. Cozy and Mrs. Kaufman, who made that delivery to Rayanne. So pretty awesome job by our fifth grade students. Next, the kindergarten students at Ostenburg Elementary got a chance to learn about bees. One of our parents, Mr. Hadsel, happens to be a local beekeeper, and he explained to me that it has been a bumper crop of helping out bees so far this year. He said that it's bee season. So I got a little chance to learn a little bit there. But I wish that you could see all of the notes that our kindergarten students took while he was doing his presentation. Some of their notes are phenomenal. From drawings of bees to talking about what the bees do. It was a really neat experience for our kindergarten students. And then we also had Right to Read Week and did a number of activities during Right to Read Week. There's a flyer attached here. We're going to try to do a community night at Ostenburg Elementary. It would be next Thursday. We have a number of activities going on. We're going to try to put in a vegetable and floral garden on site so we can use that as a lab for our classes. We're going to see if you're smarter than a third, fourth, or fifth grader. We're going to do some crafts to add to the garden. With the students, we're going to play a movie in case you need some time to relax. And we have about 15 different groups or vendors from the community about summer activities or help that families can get working through some things with their children. So this is a pretty big night, and we hope it's a good turnout. We know that there's a lot going on at this time of the year, but we're hoping to get a good turnout next Thursday. And finally, a special thank you to Mrs. Nappy, who, in conjunction with her husband, Mr. Nappy, who works for Parker Hannafin, we were able to go ahead and apply again for a STEM grant, and we were awarded $10,000 for a continuation of the STEM grant at Ostenburg Elementary. So
Very nice.
Special thanks to Mr. and Mrs. Nappy for allowing us to apply for that. Thank you. Who's next?
Thanks, Tony.
Snorty.
I still have your drums.
Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Mrs. Doherty, principal of Cork Elementary. She appreciates the applause. Anybody else?
Does she?
Two people clap, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Markajon. At Cork Elementary, we are planning Right to Read Week. Teachers got together. They love getting together to plan this. We're going to celebrate next week. And the theme, they always come up with great themes. This year's theme is Reading is Sweet. So they're going to really make those connections with candy and Candyland pieces and games. So it's going to be enjoyable. The kids really get into it every year. They do a great job. PTO, of course, is helping out. They'll donate reading goal winners, little gift cards. We do reading buddies, dress-up days, just make a full week of it. So we're looking forward to that. Teacher appreciation, I didn't stand a chance next to our PTO. Oh my goodness, they just went all out this year for our teachers. I was looking at Mrs. Cinco because they were wonderful. Our PTO has done so much for us, so we do appreciate that. And then our students, speaking of PTO, they have been sponsoring field trips. Third grade went to the Great Lakes Science Center. First grade, of course, went to Ag Day, and then they had a great time there. And grade 4 is going to Pioneer School. That'll be coming up here in a couple weeks, hopefully. And they go into a log cabin and learn what it's like to be back in Ohio's frontier back in 1830. So they went last year. They really liked it. They make them work, but they still really liked it there. So they're really looking forward to that. The kids love field trips. And speaking of field trips, sorry, I can't hold everything. I just hope you'll bear with me for 1 minute. Everybody's been talking about Geneva Pride and our kids and everything that goes into that. And with the third grade class, I did get an email from a parent. And this really shows Geneva Pride. And it's not just for the Cork students. This is all our students in every building. So if you'll bear with me. Yesterday's field trip was so much fun. I wanted to take a moment to express my gratitude for the exceptional behavior you showed to our visit to the Cleveland Science Center. Your behavior truly showed what it means to be a Geneva Eagle, and I couldn't be prouder of each one of you. First, I want to thank you for being so kind and considerate to each other throughout the trip. It's wonderful to see how you support and uplift one another. Your kindness does not go unnoticed, and it truly makes a difference in the world. Additionally, I was incredibly impressed by how well you listened and followed instructions. Your attention ensured a smooth and enjoyable experience for everyone. It also demonstrated your respect for the rules and expectations we set as a group. Your ability to listen and act accordingly is a valuable skill that will serve you well in all aspects of life. And lastly, I must applaud your patience while sitting on the hot bus in traffic. There was a traffic incident. We got them back just in time. Kudos to the bus driver. They did a great job. Despite the challenging conditions, not once did I hear a complaint or witness any impatience. Your ability to remain calm and composed speaks volumes about your growing maturity. And overall, you were a shining example of what it means to be responsible, respectful, and kind-hearted Geneva Eagles. So again, that's not just the third grade at Cork, that's many of our students that you'll see in all the buildings. So I just wanted to share that because I thought it was very nice and positive for them too. And I did share that on our morning announcements because I think everybody needed to hear that. So thank you for listening to that. And then we're just wrapping up the year too with a lot of activities, 5th grade picnic. We have our family fun night coming up, lots of stuff. It's our busy, fun time of the year. So we look forward to it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Missy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. We've had a very busy but fun month at the high school. Everything from the National Honor Society inductions to prom. So tonight I wanted to highlight 3 kind of fun activities that I got to witness for the first time here in Geneva. And that first one is going to be prom. Our prom was held May 3rd at the Lodge. And we were very, very thankful to have so many staff members volunteer to chaperone. Miss Gillette, Miss Richmond, Miss Kretz, Miss Steiger, Debbie and Alan Wilson, Miss Unsinger, Miss Fair, Officer Cooper, Mr. Lillie, Mr. King, and of course my lovely wife, Mrs. Chenoweth. We were happy to crown Caden Collins and Rochelle Sanders as King and Queen. And I wanted to give a big thank you and a big shout out to Mrs. Marky John and Mrs. Blevins for all the hard work they did planning the prom. Next, I wanted to highlight our Staff Appreciation Week. This was a lot of fun. Tuesday was probably my favorite day. We had a delicious lunch provided by the academic boosters.
And if you look at the graph above, we see that Tuesday was dressed like a student day, and I had about 5 or 6 detentions I had to issue to staff members. They had hoods up, they had earbuds in, so that was a lot of fun. The kids got a kick out of it.
Did they have to explain what Pearl Jam was?
I'm sorry?
Did they have to describe what Pearl Jam was?
Yeah, right. And then finally, I wanted to highlight the triple win for choir. Congrats to Miss Mather and the student musicians in our choirs. They competed and won the Triple Crown at Cedar Point on May 11th. They placed first for the mixed choir, they placed first for the show choir, and they were grand champions overall for the high school. So they did an excellent showing. Thank you very much.
It's a rough crowd tonight. I don't know. We had an event today for 5th grade. We were trying to showcase community outreach. We want more of the community to come into our classrooms and talk to our students, get them to understand what businesses that we have in Geneva, and also for them to think about maybe what they might want to do later on in life. So we're trying to meet 2 things here. So today we had a representative from the ambulance service, the Geneva K-9 unit, who brought Reggie. I don't know if Amy would, did you see Reggie, Amy? No. He's a brindle, and he was just adorable. The Geneva Library, and a parent who runs her own salon. I was at the saloon, obviously. Her own salon, salon. So they all came in. The students had a really great time. They expressed some interest in their organizations, and next year we're thinking about adding 4th grade onto that, and of course more outreach programs. So that was something great. This time of the year, as many of them has spoken about, we have many activities happening. The 3rd grade reading diagnostic was given. It's over. 3rd grade diagnostic and the iReadies are over, like we're ready. 5th grade recorder concert is this Friday. If you really want to come out and see a good time, you need to come out to this recorder concert. We also are planning for summer school extended learning, taking field trips, Ag Day, as Mrs. Doherty talked about. We have a kindergarten program, graduation next week. It's going to be so cute. Field day, and 5th grade clap out and parade. So please, on the bottom, I gave a list of activities and times so that if you want to come, you're more than welcome to come. I would also like to say that thank you to our PTO for all the things that they gave our teachers and staff throughout the whole building. Every day they had something great. It was nice to go in and see everybody conjugating in the teacher's lounge and talking and just having a merry time. I'd also like to thank the GPS staff for welcoming me for my first year there. Hopefully they're all surviving. You're surviving, okay, good. Good, that's good to see. And I appreciate all that they do for our building and our students. We did get the buddy bench, so I have a picture of the buddy bench. It is out there. The students absolutely love it. That's all they want to do is sit on the buddy bench.
Cool.
It is really cool. And then you have Miss Kinney asking, are we done yet? With her arms wide out. And then Miss Kira, who's like, peace out for the year. So a lot of great things. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Mrs. Porcello.
Good evening. My update is highlighting 9 students, 9 staff members that spent over 155 hours of their time this year working on reading. Holly Bowser, Jessica Kirk, Cheryl Ramsey, Missy Doherty, Katie Sunderland, Kim Brunsman, Paula Cruz, Nikki Nelson, and Dana King all have gone through, almost done, with the Wilson Level 1 certification program. And as they were finishing up, I caught wind of some of their results. And this whole time I've been telling them, you just wait. You just wait till the end. You're going to be amazed. You don't see it as you're going through that these students are having the growth that they are. So I highlighted some of the numbers and some of their comments. I'm not going to read their comments, but the numbers. We had a 4th grader who went from grade level 2.0 in real and nonsense word reading to a 4.3. That same student went from a 2.3 in spelling to a 3.9. We had a student in 4th grade that for reading comprehension went from a grade level 1.5 to a grade level 2.5. Let's see, some other huge ones. Sentence reading fluency for a 4th grade student went from a 2.4 to a 3.7. Comprehension, a 2.5 to a 4.6. Real and nonsense word reading for a 5th grade student, 2.6 to a 4.3. Just huge gains. One student was reading 36 words per minute, 95% accuracy at the beginning of the year. Last check, I have the numbers backwards. It's 96 words per minute at 100% accuracy on their last check. So it went from 36 words to 96 words over the course of 8 months, really, of this work. And it's just huge to highlight the successes of these. And I responded to each of these staff members with kudos, and I'd love to find the students who I'm not allowed to know who they are and let them know too, this is huge. And I know when I did this program and I shared the outcomes with my student, it was, you wanted to cry because it meant so much to those students to know that they could do this. It's huge. One that's not on here that I got an email right before the board meeting, a student went from, I believe it's a 4th grade student, went from a reading level MN at the beginning of the year to currently reading level T. So just wanted to highlight some of those really awesome things that were happening due to the Wilson training that our teachers were doing.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thanks,
Thank
Kelly.
you, Kelly.
Mr. Poland?
Good evening. I'll try and make it quick. We did a lot of things for the community. The Geneva VFW Post 6846 and Ron Stetler donated a new flag for our school, and the fire department, when they're testing the hoses, was nice enough to hang it for us because our pulley system doesn't work in our flagpole. So they went up and hung that for us. We appreciate that.
Maintenance.
We had 2 student athletes go to the middle school track meet state championship, Gia Palmisano and Taylor Sheeman. Gia had a great showing, did not place, but she did an awesome job. 7th grader, we expect her to be back next year in a couple of different events. She was there in the long jump. Taylor went in the 1600 meter and placed 2nd in the event, so we're very proud of her. The American Legion out of Ashtabula, Post 103, had an essay contest. The topic was, what is the meaning of Memorial Day, and what does it mean to me? They went to 5 different districts in the county. 28 middle schoolers wrote or participated in the contest. Our students did a great job. We placed 1, 2, and 3. 3rd place was Morgan Hildebrand. She got $100. Paige Burns was 2nd place with $250. And Anna Sheminsky got 1st place and got $500. As from loans with each of them, they said.
Okay, we need to say that again.
Shemansky.
28 middle school students across the county.
Yep.
We got the top 3.
Yes, that is
Yeah, we
absolutely
did.
correct. Now,
And Miss Shemansky is a granddaughter of one of the English professors that was there when I was there, and she always makes me read Harry Potter.
See?
My best friend is her uncle, and she and her brother and sister are the most brilliant people I think
Yep,
I've met at that
absolutely.
age.
So as I was sitting there, Officer Cooper was in my office and said, you want to do some good things today, so we'd call them parents to let them know. And I asked Paige Burns, what did you write about? She looked at me dead-faced and said, Memorial Day. I said, I'm done.
Time to go home.
But then Ann, I said, what did you write about, honey? And she said, I wrote about how I'm a Girl Scout and how we do all these things for Memorial Day. And I said, okay, thank you very much. I feel much better about my life right now. So we have Movie Under the Stars coming up this Friday. Unfortunately, as I look at the forecast, I think it's going to be moving to the gym.
Oh, they don't know yet.
That's true.
Please.
We're having our fingers crossed. But we're going to have a movie sometime or somewhere this Friday night. If we're middle school students, it is free. We're very excited. The kids voted. We're watching the original Karate Kid. And we partner with the Geneva Public Library. They're borrowing or lending us their large inflatable screen. Every year we partner with ATEC. They give us money to go after, to enhance or encourage kids in different careers. That helps. They give us money to go towards our reality day, mock interviews, and we use some of that money for classrooms. We had 3 people write grants, and they all 3 received them. Melissa Hall out of the high school for her yearbook class received a digital camera, camcorder, and other things for the class to enhance that. We're excited about that. Dave Schmansky wrote his class, so I've had a long conversation with him about how to make his class more engaging to the students and so forth. He's starting to use Scratch for coding. It's a free online program.
Awesome.
And he's actually got game controllers, so after the kids design their games, they can play them and play against each other and so forth. So we're really excited about that for next year. And Emily Long, she received supplies for her 7th grade science class, moving more towards a STEM feel in that classroom. So we're really excited about the possibilities in those classrooms. And appreciative that teachers made an extra effort. 5th and 8th grade orientation on May 28th. I think I talked about this last time, where 5th graders, from all three schools, are coming to the middle school, and the 8th graders come to the high school at the same time, so they get a feel for next year and try to ease some nerves for that. And then we have, the other thing I'd like to highlight is we have Bike Safety Week, or half a week. They're going to GPS. It's Bike Cleveland. It's coming in, partner with the city. City's paying for the cost of it. I think it's $450. They paid for them to come in. We're going to work with GPS on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We're going to work with our kids during lunchtime, and I've listed on there what they're looking at. Bikes, bike safety. They're going to have a little rodeo going on and so forth. So we're really excited about that.
Do you know if that's part of the Safe School program the City Council's been working on?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you.
And what they're trying to do is get Geneva called a bike safe town, city, and so forth. So really trying to promote that, so hopefully get some bike lanes in the future and so forth.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Cam.
Thanks, Mr. Poland. Is
it everybody? Okay, moving on. You gonna do these or me too? Thank you. The substitute superintendent recommends, you wanna do it?
No, go right ahead.
No, you go. You wanna do rock, paper, scissors?
Substitute Superintendent recommends that we continue our membership in the Ohio High School Athletic Association for the Geneva High School and Geneva Middle School grades 7 to 12. It is agreed that we will conduct our athletic program in accordance with the Constitution, bylaws, regulations, interpretations, and decisions of the Ohio High School Athletic Association. Membership dues are based on $50 per OHSAA sanctioned sport in which the high school participates. This resolution shall remain in effect for the 24-25 school year.
Can we get a motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion about that?
Is this verbatim from last year then? Other than the
Yes, to my
dates?
knowledge, it's the same.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
The substitute superintendent recommends that the enclosed list of Geneva High School students be approved for graduation, providing they meet the State of Ohio and Geneva Area City School District diploma requirements. Graduation will be held on Sunday, June 2nd at 2 p.m. at Spire.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
The substitute superintendent recommends approval of the revised pay to participate policy and fee payment form to take effect with the 24-25 school year.
Motion, please.
Moved.
Second? I need a second. Do we not approve of this, or do we need discussion?
I'll give you a second, but I'd like to discuss it.
Of course.
Okay.
What do you got?
I just feel that with the $103,000 that this brings in and the roughly $1 million that the valuation increase is bringing in, it just seems like we keep asking and asking and asking our families to pay more money, and I think that this should be suspended for the 24-25 school year.
The increase, you mean?
Pay to play.
Oh, all of it?
All of it.
So there'd be no pay to play?
That's
The lack of second came from the fact that we understand it most likely, at least for me, I understand it brings money in. But this community needs services back. Their busing was gone. Everyone had to sit and balance the budget. Kevin did a bang-up job. We're in a position now we weren't in before. It's because they helped us recoup this money. I agree with Mrs. Ortiz that, in my personal opinion, pay-to-play should be eliminated. It's an unnecessary barrier, and it stigmatizes certain sports, and it kind of throttles athletes that would otherwise be able to play and have an outlet and have
Does
a
it?
place to be.
Don't we have scholarships to cover it? We can.
I think that's subjective.
No,
No,
there's not enough
having
scholarship.
scholarships
There's
to
not
cover
enough
it's not
scholarship to
subjective.
cover everybody.
And we have taxpayers, and those taxpayers have
Yes.
children, and I think that's
My
where
question
it
is, are there student athletes not playing because they're unable to pay?
I think they'd be
I
embarrassed
thought
to
that we had
answer
covered
yes
that.
to
I
that
think
question.
scholarships.
I think it's definitely an economic barrier
I do
because
too.
you have to put yourself out there to ask for help,
Okay,
right? So
fair enough.
I think it's,
Yeah.
but
It's hard being an eighth grader and saying, I don't got the money, but I'd really like to run track. And it is embarrassing.
And the avenues we have, right,
Right.
okay. I hear that. Mr. Lillie, do you have any thing to say about it? Can we afford to not
Well,
bring in that money?
you know, it was put in at a time when the school district was making cuts, way back in 12, 13. When you take it out, I think it's difficult to put it back in, and most of the districts in Ashtabula County still have pay to participate. Districts in Lake County still have. It only covers about 1/4 of the cost of our coaches and student activity advisors. And yes, there have been donations. There's the Mark Brace Pay to Participate Fund, but that's only for sports. Other people have made donations to pay for individuals and so on. I don't think when they administer the Mark Brace Fund that they, well, not very often would they give anybody the full amount. They want them to have something into it. So they usually cover 1/2 to 3/4 of the pay to participate fees. So, I mean, it's up to the board.
Ms. Crossley, do you have any opinion on it? That you'd like to share in front of everybody?
On the spot?
I don't mean to put you on the
Like right
spot,
now?
but I feel like you should be involved in this discussion. You know, you're the athletic director. Anything else? And aren't. Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, are choir and band also paying?
Yes.
Choir, band,
theater.
and drama theater.
Yeah, I
Theater's
think,
per show.
$25.
Theater's per show. So if you're a bad actor and only do one show, it's cheaper. No. I know. To be a techie, you have to pay. Yeah, thank you for that, Sammy.
Well, they wanted it that way. I mean, that's when.
No, that's how it should be.
When we were doing the
It shouldn't just
actors
be
and
actors.
that, they said, no, everybody that participates in the play should pay to participate fees.
I get that.
so is it something we could, like Mrs. Ortiz suggested, suspend for a year, given,
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Are you suspended for a year, or are you gonna suspend it for more? If you suspend it for a year, what's the pushback gonna be when you go to reinstitute it the next year?
Right.
Again, that's up to you. Obviously, there'll be a 5-year forecast presentation. This wasn't mentioned before, so that's still in there, but that's just $103,000 that would come off of other revenues over the next 4 years, or 1 year, depending on what the board did, but.
Could we, which one is it? Postpone it until the June meeting and wait, or does it have to be in before the school year is over?
I really would recommend that you act on it today, because they
we
usually
have to act
start
on it today.
collecting for next year, even in June and
Okay.
over the summer, and have to make plans. So If there was going to be some other action on it, I would recommend that you take that action today.
Okay. What if we cut it instead of eliminating it? I mean, discount it?
I think we're at a time right now, economy-wise, that we need to meet our families where they are. And when we had to implement this to make it a stopgap and essentially stop the bleed so that we could continue on, I at that time hadn't even considered being in this capacity, but I didn't look at it as a community member as something that was forever and ever and ever. And I think if we meet our community where they are right now and say, this has done well, as as Mrs. Ortiz said, how we have done well in other areas, I think it is an appropriate measure to extend that grace back to the community and say thank you for helping us when we needed it. And we're in a position right now where we can turn around and give this back, and we want all our kids to participate regardless of funding or lack thereof.
Okay, I hear you. Mr. Lillie, so we can afford it? I mean, this won't
Well, yeah, you
bankrupt
can
us if we
afford
do
it
this?
now, but
All right.
as you'll see in the 5-year forecast, yeah, everything looks good now, but things could change.
Sure could.
But, yeah, right now, 103,000 off the 5-year forecast isn't going to change that much.
Sure. Anything else?
City of Geneva just got a very large multi-million-dollar grant from Governor DeWine days ago. We are economically forecasted commercially, along with those business plans, even on reduction, to be doing extremely well. The revenue increases from property taxes, which I know we're all thrilled about, are going to help staff the coffers. And although we will adjust for, I would say, 5 to 7% inflation, probably over the course of 2020 to 2025, depending on how the Fed sits, I think that number of $103,000. I think that is, and I don't want to speak, this is your wheelhouse, Kevin. I feel comfortable with that. Do you feel like that's misguided in any way?
No, like I said, it's 103,000. When you look at the forecast, that's a very small percentage of that. If this, wouldn't be something that we would have done 5 years ago, now, yeah, it's a possibility. But just keep in mind that, I mean, I don't see it as a bad thing, being able to have people participate in sports without paying. It's just the fear would be, okay, what happens down the road if you have to reinstate it? When this was put in, obviously we were cutting sports. We cut out a lot of middle school, freshman sports, even some varsity sports that were, at the time, had low numbers, cross country and swimming. A lot of those sports, or a number of those sports, were funded by outside organizations. They slowly were brought back to where, at this point, we basically have them all back.
Right.
Again, it's strictly up to the board and what you want to do.
I just think it would be very appropriate to, thank the community and put that money back in their pocket. And I think it would be, if we were in that position again, the conversation would be completely different, because we would be able to cite these examples as to when we were able to give back, and we did.
Anything else? Yeah, this wasn't on my radar, Mrs. Ortiz, so thank you for bringing it up, and thank you for your input, everybody. Roll call, please.
Well, hold on.
Well,
So you got change here. So on the books, you have a motion and second recommending approval of the revised pay to participate policy and fee payment form. So now, in order to change that, you want to amend that motion. So we need a motion and a second to amend that motion to what?
I propose a motion to eliminate the enclosed student athletic policy handbook for 24-25, and thus suspend the policy for the 24 to
Not the whole handbook.
Well, then.
No, we're
pay to
not talking
pay
about the
policy
student
is
activity
what I'm
policy
saying.
handbook.
I'm
The
sorry,
pay
I
to
read the wrong one.
participate, yeah,
Yeah,
you
pay to
skipped ahead.
participate, not the policy. Sorry, guys.
Yeah,
So-
we're not trashing the whole handbook.
There's no rules.
There's no rules any longer.
All right.
Do what you will.
Couldn't we just vote down this motion and do another one?
No, you
No.
have a motion
You
on
have
the
to amend it.
table, so
Okay.
the method
All right.
is to amend the motion.
need a
So
motion to amend this
Mr. Pierson, I
motion.
believe, was motioning to amend to discontinue You want to,
Can we put in?
I would
for the-
say, and let me know what you guys think. We recommend suspension of the revised pay to participate, or we can say the elimination of pay to participate.
I like suspension, that leaves it open for if we
I think
are in a bad place
suspension for the
again.
24-25 school year, and then a year from now, we reevaluate.
I think that's what I'm comfortable
Yeah.
with.
suspension of to take effect with the 24-25 school year.
Correct.
Okay?
Okay.
So Mr. Pearson has moved to
Second.
amend that
Second.
motion.
Second.
Mrs. Krieg
Everybody
seconded.
second? And now roll call,
And,
yeah?
yes, now to amend the motion,
Amend the motion.
we
I
need a roll call.
Yes or no? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
And now we need to vote on that amended motion.
Okay. So the motion is, Mr. Pierson, one more time, please.
It is that we recommend the suspension of pay to participate for the 24 to 25 school year.
And that's a motion. We need a second?
No, we have the
That's
motion
the
and second to
amended.
amend. Now we need to vote on the
Okay.
amended motion.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
Nice. Thank you, guys. Okay.
Substitute Superintendent recommends that the board approve the enclosed student athletic policy handbook for the 24-25 school year.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Which one is this?
Student athletic
I don't have them in
policy.
the right order. Okay. No discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Cybulski.
Yes.
Substitute Superintendent recommends that the board approve the enclosed coaches handbook.
Motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
and Mrs. Krieg.
Yes.
The substitute superintendent recommends that the board approve the enclosed preschool parent handbook for the 24-25 school year.
Moved. Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
and Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
The substitute superintendent recommends that the board approve the enclosed elementary school handbook for the 24-25 school year.
Moved.
Second.
Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Pierson,
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
The substitute superintendent recommends that the board approve the enclosed middle school handbook for the 24-25 school year.
Moved.
I'll give a second, but I want to discuss 9 and 10.
Okay. Discussion. 9 and 10. What are we on? Middle school.
I've got a real problem with no book bags.
Okay.
I received several emails from students who have, sorry about my daughter's luck, sought her out. But I'm going to read you one that was very well written, and I responded and appreciated her candor and what she brought
I'm
out.
sorry, Mrs. Craig, before you do that, where is it in the handbook?
So in the high school handbook for code of conduct, it's on page 8 and it's highlighted in red.
But we're talking
It's
about middle
also in the middle school handbook, and I printed that page, and it is on page 9 of the middle school handbook.
Thank
And
you.
it's highlighted as well. So the letter that I received, good afternoon, Mrs. Craig. I'm emailing you about the 24-25 student handbook. I've heard that there is a new and adapted student handbook for next year. On the bottom of page 8, it stated that book bags would not be allowed to be used throughout the day by any student unless the administration permits them to. At the beginning of the school year, there was a rumor that this was going to happen. Lots of students were upset just by the rumor, but now that it is going to happen, I'm sure the majority of the students are going to be very upset. No book bags would be a huge change in the everyday school day for students. There are plenty of reasons why book bags being prohibited would negatively impact students. 3 of the main reasons would be there is not enough time for students to go to their locker in between every class. Girls have nowhere to keep their feminine products, and kids will still find a way to hide the items that the administration is trying to prevent them from being used. Students are given 4 minutes to walk from one class to the other, barely enough time to walk from one class to your locker and to your next class. That is also not even taking into account a student having to use the restroom. No book bags would increase the number of kids tardy every period. Being late would not only make the teacher unhappy, but also interrupt the class. Another issue faced would be if a student didn't remember something that was needed for that class. I don't buy into that one as much because you have to be prepared for class. Another issue that this change would cause would be for girls when they are on their menstrual cycle. Book bags provide a safekeeping spot for feminine products. Without a spot to keep feminine products safely hidden, it would be difficult for women to keep them out of sight of anyone else. The school does provide products in the restrooms. However, these items are cheap, uncomfortable, and not the most durable. Many girls will feel much more comfortable using their feminine products that work for their bodies. I understand that the administration is pushing to do this to decrease the number of items such as vapes, drugs, and weapons snuck into the school in book bags. However, if students want to bring these things to school and disobey the rules, they are going to find a way to do so regardless of whether they are allowed a book bag or not. Therefore, this rule punishes not only the students who smuggle those items in, but also the students who have done nothing wrong. Why should good students who are going to school to learn be punished for the few kids who do not want to follow the rules? A different possible solution to this problem could be, instead of punishing the whole student body, only the students who broke the rules will not be allowed to use their book bags. That way it will decrease the chance these students are hiding anything that is not allowed, but the rest of the school will not be punished. I hope this message finds you well and wish you, for that. So I responded and told her, first of all, let me commend you on this well-written letter. As a board member, an educator, and a mom, spot on. I just have a real problem with assuming everyone is guilty. I'm well aware that there's probably things that are coming in backpacks that schools don't want to deal with, but this entire philosophy of everybody pays the price for a handful of kids that aren't following the rules, I am not okay with.
There's been a very strong push in the past few years to increase what I would say is the antagonist of a utilitarian society. We keep hearing that America is great in varying formats. One of the cool things about America is we all work together for the greater and the common good, and somehow it works, and it does. Saying that because a minority of students might have a nicotine vape and or the potential for an intent to do something that has not occurred, nor do we have evidence has occurred, is probably about the most ridiculously anti-constitutional item I could possibly think of. Collective punishment occurs in communist countries. So this is not the basis for an educational environment, let alone one that is supportive of any society. So if we're teaching our young children and how to engage in society and interact with each other, and we say you can't have a backpack because I know all you kids are going to have your vapes and guns, I think that conveys the wrong message to children. It doesn't give them the room to do the right thing and get accoladed. Instead, it tells them that if we were to give you any freedom, you would immediately disregard it. Therefore, freedom is not important. Freedom is the single-handed most important utility in American society. And every day that it slips away more and more from us and we fall in our rankings, we're going to notice that there's going to be a lot of things we have to take away to keep people safe. I'm not saying that there aren't risks that are posed, and I'm on a soapbox right now, and I apologize for that. However, I don't feel that mongering fear and making that fear into action where I tell a child what they can and can't own, I tell a woman if she can bring tampons to school unless she wants to smash them in her pocket. I don't have experience with that, but I would imagine that probably drastically changes the way that the object
You're
works.
going to in a few years, I guarantee you.
Yeah, I am.
Right?
And
Iris is not that far away.
even more so, and more important to me here, we have a narrative from a student who has given us this narrative, and I want to say that not only if I hear you, I plan to probably vote yes on this beforehand, and hearing that account from a point of view that I've never considered using a tampon in my life. But knowing that I have a young daughter right now who's going to one day face these issues, that's something that I need to be mindful of now. So I appreciate the student for her candor in writing this letter, because I definitely will take that into consideration on my vote.
I also received a Google sheet from a survey from a student. 52 students filled out the survey on why they don't like this policy. And I think I commend our students for speaking out and taking the steps to have a voice in some decisions that we're making.
This kind of, I was going to say this for my board member comments, but this leans into something that I would really like to see us as a district adopt with our high school students. You know, we want our kids to have, you know, ownership in what they're involved in. We encourage them to be in all these activities, and we want them to, you know, share their experiences with us, and we want them to, you know, be leaders in our school. And I think one of the things that we could do to facilitate that would be to have some student representatives that sit on this board.
Yeah.
I think that it's a conversation we need to have. My platform has always been student-centered and based in best practice. We are definitely in a pivotal time in Geneva Area City School District. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of good things coming our way. And our sole purpose as a school district is to serve our community by involving all stakeholders. And our students are stakeholders in this district. What better way to see, learn, and hear their perspectives than to give them a seat at the table? I would like to work with our class advisors, grades 9 through 12, and have the student body nominate a student representative to the board. These students would join us each month at the table and bring the concerns of their peers to us, and they would not be part of executive session, but I would like to have these conversations now to involve our children so that we're ready to go in the fall, because I would see that as something that would be put out right around, I see Mrs. Markajon, I know you're an advisor, but like right around when they would run for office in the fall for student council. You know, I've always had the adage with my kids that you can talk to me about anything, you can ask me anything. Doesn't mean you're gonna get it.
Yeah.
But I'm always willing to have a conversation, and I think that we as a board need to lead by example, and I think we have some amazing kids in our building here that would be fantastic to sit on this board.
Yeah.
As a follow-up to that, Mrs. Craig, coincidentally enough, Mr. King and I had that same conversation earlier today. There were there are many districts out there that have students sit on the board, you know, kind of as an advisor
Yes.
or whatnot. Those districts put in, you know, protocols, procedures, and things
Sure.
like that. It's just not simply, beginning of the school year, here you go.
Absolutely.
There's some things
Yeah.
that are worked out, right?
Sure.
But just to let you know that Mr. King and I did have that conversation.
That's
Just a
fantastic.
handful of years ago, a handful of hours ago. He would value that input to kind of see where that might go.
Well, then you should have come to the meeting.
Well, he went to a rained-out baseball game.
And I've been talking to Mr. King as well as about the institution of Robert's Rules and teaching it through the format that Geneva had previously competed and crushed it in with the absolute amazing and wonderful graduates of 2010 of Model United Nations.
Gee, Mr. Pierson, when did you graduate?
No, I was talking about Gregory Howard, of course. There are a lot of people. Rob Allman works at NASA. Greg also works in STEM. We have David Armington Moore. He works as a representative for Google. I mean, these kids are class acts. That institution was gone. I spoke with Mr. King a little bit about the necessity to teach Robert's Rules and the parliamentary procedure. And how that actually teaches us really cool things about why life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness are the 3 founding principles of democracy, and why even though procedurally we always see government move really slow, there is the saying, the government always moves very slowly but grinds a fine grain. And what that means is they do it slow, but they do it right. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's something we hear our military veterans teach us often. You might have heard your grandpa say it while fishing. I think this is an exemplary, example of that exact behavior, and it's cool that a student brought it to us.
Yes, absolutely. And I think these are, and again, it's not going to be a quick, hey, you're going to be on this, and I completely agree with you, Mr. Riley. We have to have conversations, set boundaries. I've reached out to a couple districts already just to see what the framework is, because we really don't need to reinvent the wheel. I know other places are doing this, but we need to acknowledge the fact that our students are leaders, and we need to put them where leaders make changes. So, but I am not comfortable with the backpack policy, and I don't know what we need to do to address that.
So how many are we confiscating backpacks? How much paraphernalia are we taking off of our students that?
Correct. I have Mr. Chenoweth and Mrs. Carnett, Mr. Pullen worked on developing this policy, this procedure. I'd like them to address kind of some of the things that they're seeing, some of the reasons that maybe they're hearing from the teachers as to why it's been a safety concern and whatnot. So I'm not sure who would like to address that first, but I will defer to my building administrators.
When we discussed this, it wasn't paraphernalia, it was more safety concerns. If you picked up a student's book bag, they're extremely heavy, the kids with sore backs and so forth. They're in the aisleways, in the classrooms. They're just an overall safety concern out there. We didn't talk about anything inside the book bag with more the weight and so forth along that way.
Oh.
So it wasn't.
So we're not even upset for the right reason. So we don't even disagree with it for the right reason.
At least
That's interesting.
from a middle school perspective.
All right, high school?
Mr. Chenoweth, what's going on with high school?
Yeah, similar. I mean, there is some riffraff that people hide in their bags. But the bags that the kids carry are 75 pounds or more.
Well, then let's solve that instead of just banning book bags.
And it's a tripping hazard for teachers and students alike in the classroom.
So I would think then that a reasonable solution for that would be to maybe add a minute to bell times. Where can we carve out some minutes?
Well, I question, and only because I have 2 children who don't use their lockers. I personally don't think it's a timing issue.
Then what is it?
I just think that they prefer to have everything
stuff.
they need on them.
They're so worried that they're going to be late or not have what they need when they get to class and not be allowed to go.
I mean, I would think a solution might be your backpack has to fit under your chair.
Right.
Or you
It's
can't
too big
have
and
it
yeah.
in the, I get the like tripping over
Yeah.
it but I'm not sure eliminating the backpack.
Is going to, yeah.
Is there other methods to come up with a better plan?
Well, what
Mr.
he's
Bowen,
saying about, well, what Mr. Pullen is saying about heavy backpacks, he is not wrong. I
agree.
I have asked
Yeah.
my children to downsize their backpacks numerous times in the last month because they're ridiculously
Because you grab it to
heavy.
move it away from the table and herniate yourself.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah.
So I understand that, but I also understand the other side where they can't have it with them during the day when they need stuff. And
Right.
that is critical also. So this is a very big problem,
Yeah.
trying to figure out what
Well, and
makes
of
the
course,
most sense.
that you trip on them because when you hit it with your foot, it doesn't move.
No.
No, not with that much weight in it, yeah.
Excuse me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So could we address maybe the time management issue of going to lockers and getting what they need so that their backpacks don't weigh 75 pounds?
Well, they still do from home to school.
But if they have
And
the
school to
morning,
home.
but they're not if storage is the issue, then we would be addressing that when they arrive and go to their locker in the morning, get what they need for the first part of their day, and then go again at lunch and deliver that message and say, listen, this is the last ditch effort. If you aren't going to, follow the rules and load up in the morning and then switch out for the afternoon, you're not going to be able to have a backpack. I mean, I think we need to give them a solution before we just carte blanche take everything away and say you can't have a backpack.
I agree, Mrs.
Because
Krieg.
the anxiety that this is giving my daughter when she's going to have to deal with monthly things is ridiculous.
Now, I did speak with Mr. King briefly, and there are like, you can still carry a small bag.
Mm-hmm.
So is there, as a female, do you want to do that once a month?
Oh, guess why she's
What's
carrying
in
her
your
bag this
bag?
week?
Well, as a dude, I'd love to carry a small bag around high
So,
school.
and my other concern
Rob.
is the Chromebooks. There is some safety in carrying them in the hallways inside a bag.
That's
versus carrying
carrying
it
them-
in your
yeah.
arms, and somebody's messing around, and there's your Chromebook, and now,
Well, that person has to replace it.
well, you.
No, I know. I
Good
get
luck
you.
with that. But anyway, those are just some of the thoughts that I've heard, discussed.
Could we postpone?
Could we table this and
Yeah.
maybe work on
Mr.
some?
Poland,
the same
Mr.
meeting.
Poland, are you sending your handbook out to printers for a plan of this year? No, so there's no timetable in terms of that. So to your thoughts, I just wanted to clarify with Mr. Poland, that's a little bit of a change from when I was down there, but I would think you could, in this case, you could table both of these.
Yes.
Postpone both of these to allow the school administrators to reconvene, maybe get some student input, or at the very least explain to the student body a little bit more what they were thinking about.
What the expectations
just to
are.
clarify,
Yeah.
a lot of this apprehension or anxiety or whatever you want to call it is perhaps we just need to communicate it better.
Yes.
In the forefront, and there's
Amen.
nothing wrong we can certainly go back and do that and postpone this for these two items until later on.
Well, and I think the first thing we need to communicate, to Mr. Pierson's point, that's what I thought too. We were banning book bags because of drugs and weapons.
Yeah, something, yeah.
Right?
I mean, it comes
I
off.
didn't-
It
I
doesn't matter
didn't
what
know,
the intent
right?
is.
I didn't know
They're
what
going
the
to take
point
it
was.
that way.
Yeah.
So if I don't, I'm sure the community at large thought the same thing. So postpone it?
Yes,
Can we
please.
postpone it, Mr. Poland, Mr. Chenoweth? How long can we postpone it? Can we,
Should we just circle back up in June? Would that
Yeah.
be enough time
Is
to
June- is
come up
June
with a
good?
plan?
all right,
Are you okay with that? Okay.
good, thank
So
you.
June.
All right, so we need to amend this motion to, sorry, let me find my place.
Number 8. No.
Number
9 and
10.
Number 9.
Uh-huh.
We were on
9,
number 9 and we jumped to number 9
9.
and 10 combined.
and we combine 9 and 10. So, actually, if we're gonna, well, but we didn't combine 9 and 10. The discussion was,
That's,
on
I
9 right
wanted to
now.
get, yeah.
At the middle school, the discussion covered both.
so
of
we
them.
need an amended motion to postpone this vote until the June meeting. Right?
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
And then you need a vote on that amended motion to postpone.
So, excuse me. Excuse me. I need a motion to postpone, no?
You just need a vote.
A vote,
Just tell me, take a roll call
roll call,
on the amended motion to postpone.
okay.
Mrs. Cybulski,
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson.
Yes.
Okay, now that we're on 10, do we have to do that whole same thing?
No, you haven't made a motion yet, so
Yeah,
you
but that
can
one
move
doesn't-
right now.
To
Make a
postpone.
motion to postpone
Okay.
item 10.
I need a motion to postpone item 10 till the June meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
But while we're on that, can we still have discussion on it? Ken? Because I have other things in the handbook I'd like to talk about.
Perfect.
So, this was the first year that I've read this word for word. So I have some things I'd like to discuss.
Is this high school?
Sorry?
Is this high school?
High school. The high school and the conduct code and the handbook are the same thing, correct? Why are they called handbook everywhere else but conduct code in high school is my first question.
It's the code of conduct for middle school as well.
Oh, is it?
Student code of conduct.
Okay. I think that labeling should be universal, right? So can we call it a handbook or a code of conduct? Can we pick one? That's neither here nor there. My big issues are these. Okay, page 7 of the high school, under school assigned textbooks, and this is an umbrella concern. The first sentence is each student is responsible for books, blah, blah, blah. Our handbooks say this over and over and over, that the student is responsible, the student is responsible. I don't think that's actually true. The student is not gonna have to pay necessarily. It's the guardians that are responsible. So maybe we wanna look at reworking that so that it's the student's responsibility, but ultimately they're a minor. We can't.
I think that's implied.
The duty, right? The
Do you?
duty would be to a child, but the child doesn't have the capacity of contract.
Yeah.
Thereby, it would go to the person
It
who has
defers to
guardianship
the-
over them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
everyone
that's
just
implied.
assumes that?
Yeah.
I would
Is
say
that-
that's implied,
All
yes.
So if in your estate you have a minor who loses a book, I have some bad news for you.
Okay. So then on the following page, page 8, under selling items, the second bullet point there, students may not participate in fundraising activity for a group in which they are not members without the approval of the student's advisor. So first of all, I'm not sure who would approve. So if the football team is doing a fundraiser, then that's the football coach approves that? My question really is, they can't help each other? If a cheerleader is dating somebody in the band, she can't help her boyfriend with the fundraiser? Doesn't it read like only the kid is allowed to do that? Students may not participate in fundraising if they're not in the group.
It's on page.
The second bullet.
The second bullet point, okay.
I don't understand why that's a rule, I guess. Why can't you help do another fundraiser if it's not your group?
You don't think the advisor would approve?
I think in
Well,
some,
why is it
I
even a
think, in-
thing?
I think in some cases, if you're in a group, I'm just using the example of a candy sale, and you are given a box of candy that you need to sell, you as a student that has been given that box, you are responsible for that, for that. So if you
If you give it to your boyfriend and he eats them all,
then he owes you $50 or whatever it costs for
But
those.
ultimately, the person.
Ultimately, the person that took that
So
item
when
out.
you d-
This is a simple example.
Yeah, so
Alright.
when you don't turn the candy or the money in, it's not boyfriend's problem, it's your problem because you're the one that was doing the fundraiser.
So our solution to that is the boyfriend isn't allowed to help.
Well, with permission.
I don't think,
But
It
I think
says
that,
with
I think,
There is a pathway. Go to the advisor and say, can I sell the candy bars? And if we think that, John Doe is a very upstanding citizen, then he will be able to sell them. Let's say he was Brock
all
Pierson in
right, that seems like a
2010.
lot for a
Probably
little.
not gonna get the extra candy to sell.
here's the other piece of this that I think too, because, for example, like if parents take something to work to sell,
Yes.
I've done that a few times, where they're, like the
Yeah.
cookie fundraiser for track. I took the order form to school because I'm not in Geneva and I could sell a lot of cookies down there. So, if I took on that responsibility and then I didn't collect, it wouldn't be Julia's fault. It would be on me and I would be responsible for those funds. And I think that's another, because the minute you add a third party to it, it just.
It blurs it, I get it.
Yeah.
But for
and then
us
you also
to,
can't have an expectation that, I helped raise funds.
Yes.
So I'm going with the choir to Cedar Point.
Right.
Even though I'm not in the choir. Right? Like that, I think that's part of it. Oh, my
Alright.
boyfriend sold
We're not allowed to do that.
$300
Oh, the candy,
worth
he
of
should be allowed to
stuff.
go to
Now
Italy.
he should be able to go.
You're not going to Cedar Point.
Right.
all right. Okay, I'll drop, I just want to put it out there that it's missing a little bit.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I came here.
Okay,
This is the day I chose.
page 9,
Okay.
cafeteria regulations right before field trip starts. We still have free and reduced price meal program in there. I think that's just, we need to delete that, right? There's no reduced meals anymore?
No, there's
think that's-
there's still
reduced
free and
meals.
reduced. You
I
just
thought that
have
was
to
just
apply.
free.
It's not. It doesn't apply to everyone in the district like it did.
Correct.
Now it's just you have to. Families have to apply and qualify to get free and reduced lunch.
Not if they're on Medicaid.
You always have to file the paperwork.
Yes.
Okay.
Always have to
So
file.
reduced days. We have
Right.
reduced lunch still.
Yes, right now we do.
Yes, and it's done now, speaking from where I work, I'm sure it's sourced the same throughout the state, but it's now done electronically. You turn those forms in, and it's not like, I know many of you might remember when we were in school. Are you getting a
Yeah.
school lunch? Are you buying, or are you free lunch? Like, we
Yeah.
don't do it that way anymore.
Oh, every single kid was like
So, it's like, are you getting a school lunch? It doesn't matter how it's getting paid for. Are
Right.
you getting a meal from school? Yes or no? That's all I need to know. So all of that paperwork still has to be put out for us to be in compliance with
Right.
the national.
I get all that. I was just under the understanding, I thought that we had we eliminated the reduced, I thought it was free or full price. Where did I get that?
Oh,
That's
well,
not a
there-
thing?
there
Probably
was
during COVID.
action- There was action right now that the state did eliminate this year. We don't know if it's still.
But we don't
gonna
know
be
for the
effective
following school
next
year.
year.
Okay.
So that might get
That
changed
they-
later.
They eliminated that and they're paying that reduced.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on. I don't want to take all night with this. Page 10, safety and security toward the bottom, letter F. Portions of the building that will not be needed after the regular school days are closed off. Is that true? Right now, there are portions of the building not accessible? I don't think that's true.
Classrooms are locked.
Classrooms are locked.
Classrooms are always locked when nobody's in there.
I don't think they should be accessible.
Well,
Agreed.
I'm saying, this says they're not, but I don't think that's accurate. Right now, I can walk down to the media center. I can walk to the front office.
But I feel like they're talking about, I know there's been times like if we're having a meeting or we're having other people from the community in, and I've seen them have like that gate that they pull, that partition across so you can't wander. I'm telling you as a teacher, when after-school activities happen in the building and you've got everything set up in your classroom where 90% of it you've paid for yourself, and you come and it's trashed in the morning, real upsetting. So I feel that's what I see with that. If you're here for a basketball game,
No,
you
I
don't
get
need to
it.
go past that gym.
I agree we should do it. What I'm saying is I don't think we do.
I think we do in certain situations. I think it falls on what activity is happening, what it is.
All right. Moving on. Lost and found on page 11. Unclaimed items will be taken to charity at the close of the school year. Why not just send unclaimed items to Rachel's Closet?
That is a charity.
That is a charity.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
Then maybe this could say that?
Well,
What
I
if
think-
Rachel's goes out of business or changes name
Rachel's
or
isn't going out of
DBAs?
business.
But Rachel's is a charity.
It is.
Right.
So
Right.
If you leave it open-ended, it makes it more.
All right.
Yeah.
We can give it to any charity we want, I guess. All right. Still page 11, absence procedures. If a student, middle of that first paragraph, if a student is not present in the morning, the robocall calling system will call to notify the parent or guardian of the student's absence. True. What's not true is when they are tardy, the parent still gets a phone call. And I've been beating this drum since I was a parent, and I think we need to fix this. I think if a child comes in tardy, their name needs to be removed from that robocall. I've gotten many a phone call that said Denny's not in school. Come to find out he was 5 minutes late and got put on the, see what I mean? I get a call at work that my teenager's not where he's supposed to be. I freak out, right? And so I think sending the call should be accurate. Again, accuracy. If we say we're gonna do it, we should actually be doing it.
it seems like though, you're asking them to go back through paperwork that's already been completed and already put into a system. If the child's tardy, then the call has already been programmed. You don't know what's your cutoff for tardy. I mean, when are you gonna not do that?
If they can enter them into the system, they can delete them in 2
But
seconds.
what Jamie's saying is when you're tardy, you're absent up until you are not, right?
Right.
So
But
I'm
the phone call
absent,
doesn't go till like 9
And then I
a.m.
come in at 10:30, but the call's already gone out. I can't pull the call
Well,
back.
then maybe there's a cutoff, but doing it,
But then people
not
will still
calling
get
till-
inaccuracies though.
but you call at 9:30 and the kid's been there since
Mr.
7:15.
Markajon, would you like?
We have removed them, the call is still made, we cannot stop the call from going.
Because I'm looking up the House bill. This is actually, this is a law that we have to do.
I understand all that.
Yeah, but you have to, the burden on the school district is to let you know, and then you do the due diligence to find out if he's tardy or not, and that's what, because they have, this was a case that happened where a school did not call, and the child had been abducted and had been out of the state for hours before
I
anybody
get
knew.
all of that.
And it's my understanding we would have a fiduciary duty to let
Of
them know
course we
that they're
do.
tardy at that time.
All right.
I'm gonna
Just
find
me, I
the, I'm
guess.
trying to find the.
That's all right.
Because I get your concern because it can alarm parents, but at the same
It's
time.
alarming.
Yeah, it should be reported though.
Obviously. I didn't say it shouldn't. Page 13, right above vacations and extended absences. The last sentence, students are required to enter and exit through the main avenue doors? Where are the main avenue doors?
Where are we looking?
What's Main Avenue?
The main hallway, right outside.
This hallway is called Main Avenue?
No, the avenue here is actually used as the proper adjective. Notice how Main Avenue is not capitalized.
Not capitalized.
Right, so that means
The
that it's
main
the main
avenue
walkway,
as a
the
general
avenue
term.
of traffic.
All right, I didn't understand that wording. I think it's weird that students have to be accompanied to outside events.
I found it. It's
I
called
wanna
the.
talk about what?
It's called the Elena Alert Law.
I understand all that, Michelle. Thank you.
Okay, my point is we don't trump the law. We have to do that. It's not, it's.
I'm not suggesting we do. I'm saying add another layer. How hard is it to say, now your kid's not absent? Doesn't matter. I'm done. Thank you all. Moving on. Mr. Riley, please.
Enclosed for review are the following new revised replacement policies for board adoption. Policy numbers are as follows.
So these are first read?
Yes, the
Thank
first
you.
read.
I need a motion to accept, or, what is it? I'm sorry.
They're just first read, Marty?
Yeah, it's the first read, so we don't have to vote or do anything, right?
Yep.
They're for review.
Any discussion about it after our first review of them? What is our rate for substitutes currently?
$125 a day.
Thank you. I have a question about policy number, I don't know where the numbers are, I can never find this. 4124, is that right?
Yep.
Employment contract, the very bottom of that page says continuing contract. I didn't think we still had a continuing contract. And if we do, let me know, we do.
We do. That too is by law.
Okay. Okay, that's the only question I had about the policies. Anything else about the policies? Okay, thanks, Mr. Riley.
The substitute superintendent recommends approval of the enclosed resolution, a resolution adopting a memorandum of understanding with the Geneva Area Teachers Association regarding collective bargaining agreement extension.
Motion.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Is this needed?
Is what needed?
I thought we had a text earlier that stated that there would.
Yeah, GATA voted for it already, we have to.
Okay.
I just wanna let you know that,
But is this an extension or resolution?
It's the 3-year rollover.
It's a resolution that there is a collective bargaining agreement extension.
Extending the current agreement for another 3 years.
Thank.
2? I
Two
thought-
years.
Two. Excuse me, I misspoke.
With a contingent on the third.
Two.
Okay, perfect. And that's what I understood. I was wondering if this had been an extension of time to come to resolution, or if this was encompassing the resolution.
Yeah, this is adopting.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody involved with that. I'm so proud of us that we did this. Thank you, GATA, and everyone who helped get us a contract for another 2 years. It's good. Okay.
Substitute
So,
super.
would you like to take a vote on that?
On what? Oh, I apologize. Yes, let's vote. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
And Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Thank you.
Substitute superintendent recommends approval of the enclosed resolution. A resolution to determine that a reduction in force of certain teaching positions may be necessary and authorizing notification of a potential reduction in force.
Motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second, with discussion.
Discussion?
Is this, these are already vacant positions?
They will be because we have retirements that are going in, limited
I see what you're
enrollment and whatnot.
It's the thing we do every year for enrollment numbers, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like a GPS, what grade is it now that's so big? Second grade? Right? And so we move a teacher up, we move a teacher down, and so technically, we eliminate a second grade or whatever position, but we're not really riffing anybody.
Awesome, cool.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Substitute superintendent recommends approval of the enclosed resolution, a resolution adopting a last chance agreement with Daniel Kowalski.
Motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call?
Mr. Pierson?
No.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Abstain.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
How'd we do?
3.
Did we get 3 votes?
Yep.
All right, motion passes. Mr. Lillie, 5-year forecast, if you would, please.
Okay, I'm gonna take a motion.
Yep.
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Mr. Markajon, let's hold up on that. This is, as the time is getting late, I'll just try to summarize quickly, sorry. So we had some things that we could show up on the board, but copy of the numbers of the 5-year forecast were available on the table in the back. If anybody could have grabbed that on the way in. I just want to highlight a few things. As we've mentioned before, and you may already know that every year school districts in Ohio are required to adopt a 5-year forecast, first in November, and then do a revision on that forecast sometime during the month of April or May. And these are filed with the now the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. Our revision of our previously adopted 5-year forecast has been sent out to board members electronically, so you have a highlighted version of the assumptions that show you the changes that were made to the initial forecast adopted in November. You also have a copy of a spreadsheet of school district income tax revenues, as well as a few charts. The major changes on this revision are to the revenue side, not too many changes to the expenditure side. And as you know, I mean, we've already reported a lot of the things that have happened, one being the larger property tax increase as a result of valuations going up in our district 25.44%. And that also will have a spin-off change of reducing our state aid next year. So as a district looks wealthier, there's a local capacity piece that's both property and income. with that valuation going up $100 million, that makes Geneva appear to be wealthier and then reduces our state aid. So as you go through this, the first page was to update the 2023 valuation, which is, actually at 25.46% due to the triennial update. On the collections side, you'll see at the bottom of that page the collections for fiscal year 24, an increase of over $1 million, and that was a 13.23% increase. And when you look at the information on there, you can see that this is an increase we've never seen before. And we may never see again. It could be a one-time thing. On the income tax, you see an unexpected result. Collections for fiscal year 24 actually decreased, where the original forecast projected a 4.2 increase this year, and those increases slowing down as they have since it started to 2.1, 1.1, and 0.6. Now with this, Ohio adjusted gross income numbers are not available for 2022 or 2023. We're in 2024 now. The most recent numbers available are 2021. Federal adjusted gross income is available for 2022, and it went up. So can't see what happened there. First thought would be that less income was taxed. I can tell you that the refunds issued were $60,000 more in fiscal year 24 than they were in 2023. So that had a part of it. But you can see that we're talking over a $150,000 decrease. So that's just a part of it, not the whole part. Given that, then we're basically going to show no growth moving forward, because we're going to have to wait and see what happens with the next collection. When you look at that spreadsheet, you can see that everything was moving right along until the last two quarters. The quarter collection received at the end of January and the quarter collection received at the end of April. Those both went down from the compared to the same quarter last year. Okay. On the state funding, as mentioned, this year we were off the formula for the first time off the guarantee and on the formula for the first time since 2007, 2008, when the guarantees first kind of started. During that time, there were many times where our state funding was reduced. And what was reduced, we stayed after those reductions on a guarantee for many years. So we were off the guarantee this year, but with the property valuation going up and our wealth looking higher, that's going to take us, according to a simulation available through the DW for fiscal year 25, it's going to take us off that formula and back on the guarantee for 25. And then the projection would be that once the inputs are updated and the phase-in occurs for the next biennium budget, and again, we're hopeful that occurs. We think that it will occur. The movement so far has been to phase in the first 4 years of the Fair School Funding Plan. It's not a 100% guarantee, right, because there are a lot of things going on legislatively right now. There's a Senate president who's already jockeying to become the Speaker of the House next year. There's a lot of division in the Republican Party in the House. It would benefit school districts if Jason Stevens remained the Speaker of the House next year. Matt Huffman has been a large proponent of vouchers that Mr. Pierson mentioned, and directing state funding, public tax dollars to private schools and parochial schools. So the hope is, and a big effort will take place, to get that phase in into years 5 and 6. And when you get that first year of the phase in and the inputs updated, that's where we see a big increase, usually about 5%, at least at the beginning of the last biennium. So we would expect that to put us back on the formula. And then you have less than a 1% increase because there's no inputs being updated in that second year. And again, that's a legislative thing. They want to know going in what the cost is going to be of that biennium budget. And without numbers updated, there's no way they know, and they don't want to guess. They don't want to use the cost of the consumer price index or anything like that. Right. So you're only going to see inputs updated at the beginning of that biennium, and then they can cost out what they expect to pay over the 2-year biennium. So given that, we have that increase, and then fiscal year 28, if it's fully phased in, then we would just be looking at about a 2% increase for the update to the inputs only, with no more phase in remaining. So you can see the changes, the numbers all changed then on the state funding. There was a little change in casino revenue. It has dropped in fiscal year 24 compared with fiscal year 23. That had been the trend prior to coming out of COVID, when all of a sudden it went up. People could go back into casinos again. But remember, there is competition with casinos, video lottery terminals, racetrack, and racinos, and all kinds of things. So as it was going down prior to COVID, I expect it to go down a little bit each year moving forward. So both our formula aid, on our formula aid, both our unrestricted and our restricted drop in fiscal year 25, and then you see them starting to go back up, but these numbers are all lower than what was shown on the initial forecast. With the increase in property taxes, the rollback in homestead increases a little more than it had. So while it was going down every year, 10.78% in 23, the percentage of collections was about 10.91% for fiscal year 24. So that added a little bit money on that line. All other revenues, you see the different revenues there. There were a few changes. Other local taxes, parent preschool tuition was adjusted. It was actually lowered a little bit. Tuition from other school districts. And then interest income. This has been a pleasant thing because we had been down to only being able to generate about $50,000 in interest. And you see right now that our expectation is $570,000 in interest income this year from our investments. So that comes with the healthy cash balance and having all that money invested. And right now I expect that to go up. Obviously, things can change. We still have some lower earning investments as a result of the economist's advice was that there would be no change in the Fed rate until late 2024. This was 2-3 years ago. So, knowing that, we went out a little longer trying to get the highest rate of interest we could, which wasn't very high. But as they started that increase a lot earlier, we're still holding those investments because it would make sense to sell them, try to unload them at a loss. The loss that we would take would eat away these interest earnings. So we hold them to maturity. But as things mature, we're able to invest in higher amounts. There is some talk about the Fed possibly lowering those rates a little bit, two Fed reductions before the end of this calendar year. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But I don't think it's going to go down a lot. Very little changes in all other financing sources. And so that's your revenue side. Basically, some increase there overall due to the property tax. On the expenditure side, not too many changes. You only see a few highlights. We adjusted the well, you don't see any adjustments on the personal services and benefits. Now, one thing, these could come in lower this year because there's still been some positions that weren't filled. Amounts in there, but a lot of things happen, paying off coaches and so on, so we're not showing any change in that right now. The numbers have been pretty close. On purchase services, again, no real changes. The biggest change is going to be on the supply side. So here, as you saw adopted last month, were curriculum recommendations with textbook purchases. I had not been given a number for that to know how high that was, and thinking, looking at the previous years when we had a few adoptions and the cost of those, didn't think it would go up so high, but now that the purchase orders are in, I've had to increase for fiscal year 24 to $1,250,000, which is a large increase over what was expected. And as you heard Mr. Riley report, they wanted to get those in, get those orders out, and get them in before the end of the school year so teachers have a chance to get their hands on them and prepare for next year. So I think that is a good philosophy. And so obviously the forecast can absorb that. But if that's going to be the textbook adoption, I don't know that it's going to be every year $1,250,000. So I just increased it from about $700,000 to $900,000 for future years, not knowing what the cost of those future adoptions might be. Very few other changes. You just see a few highlights. So basically, when you get to the end of this forecast, we're still looking good, and we're not showing any new levies on here, but you have a couple things. One, the permanent improvement levy has one more opportunity. We haven't talked about that much yet. Again, it would have to be resolutions passed in June and July to be filed with the Board of Elections by usually around August 7th or 8th to be on the ballot in November. If that were not to pass in November, then you're talking about, in future years, about $250,000, 2 buses a year that were purchased through PI funds coming into the general fund. So over the life of a 5-year forecast, that's an extra $1,250,000 once we need to buy those purchase those buses. Now, we were able to utilize ESSER funds and buy quite a few buses this past year and update the fleet. It was getting very old when we still had buses 2005, 6, 8, and 10 that were traded in. This is 2024, so where at one time we used to try to get those turned around at 10 to 12 years old. Now we actually had buses that were 18 years old. But we've updated that and even gotten into replacing some of the 2010s. The other thing, big thing on the horizon will be, as it's been mentioned before, that school district income tax. That ends, the 10 years are up at the end of 2028. Obviously, if that were to go away, you can see that in 3 years, the district loses about $13 million off this 5-year forecast on the revenue side, and that pretty much wipes out the cash balance showing at the end of 2028. So those are 2 important pieces that the board will have to worry about going forward. Other than that, the 5-year forecast shows you in very good shape. Best cash balances that the district has had in a long time. So it sets it up for the future to try to align your revenues with your expenditures and carefully consider what else you might bring back. Obviously, this forecast didn't show $103,000 being taken out, whether that's just going to be this year or ongoing. That removes a little bit of revenue from the forecast. But basically, that is the 5-year forecast that I'm presenting for your consideration.
Thank you.
Questions or comments?
Thank you for having this so well enveloped, especially with the adjustments.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
The treasurer recommends the following funds.
Moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion?
You see a grant that Mr. Markajon mentioned, the Parker Hannafin STEM grant at Austinburg. School safety grant, which comes from the Attorney General's office, can be used for specific safety-related purchases. And an ODNR wildlife education grant that was secured by Mr. Barbo at the high school. So he has $500 to spend on some wildlife education.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
I need a motion for a recommendation that the board suspend the administrators, directors, supervisors, central office staff contract guidelines for the 24-25 contract year only, and approve a 3% increase to the base for 24-25, including the new administrator's salary schedule before the application of factors for the administrators, directors, supervisor, central office staff, effective July 1, 24.
Moved. Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
And Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Substitute Superintendent recommends approval of up to an additional 20 hours per week for Scott Ola to take on additional responsibilities in addition to his position of Director of Maintenance/Transportation, to be paid at a rate calculated by dividing his daily rate by 8 hours, retroactive to March 1st, 2024, and subject to approval of the Substitute Superintendent. The lump sum of 165 hours is approved by the Substitute Superintendent from March 1, 2024 to May 3, 2024, will be spread over the next 3 paydays.
Moved. Second.
Discussion?
I received some correspondence on this talking about how teachers have taken on, additional roles and to speak with people in the union about that. The reason that we had addressed this, or at least the reason I had brought this to the table and others had already been on it, is because Mr. Ola in this capacity was working in excess of 13 to 15 hours per day. So I just want to say that, he was doing that as his house was destroyed by a tornado and living out of a hotel, and he has a sick relative he is tending to. And when I asked, are you really working 13 to 15 hours a day, there were multiple people who said, actually, it's probably more than that. So that's why this is taken into consideration. I don't want to feel like we're spitting in the faces of the teachers. We do know exactly what you're taking on. Mr. Ola, unfortunately, had been put in a position, and that's what we can say about that. So that's my consideration on this vote, at least.
I agree, Mr. Pierson. It's an extraordinary circumstance
It is.
that he's in. We understand you all step up every day and do things that you're not paid to do. We get it. And if we could pay everybody for everything they do, we'll have to ask Kevin. But I just want to reiterate that too, that it was a special circumstance. He's brand new, and he had to take on a whole nother role in absence of a person. So, and while we're on that topic, the same for the next item. Mr. Riley's done the same thing. These weren't at all intended to, what's the word? Undermine the work that the rest of you do. We get it. But these are two specific circumstances. So, and I have also gotten correspondence about it, and my thought is that we are going to discuss that. We are going to take a look. The people who reached out to me and said, hey, Susie's been doing this job and that job, Bill's been doing this job and that job, I appreciate all that. Keep sending me that so that we can talk about what to do about those and figure out We don't want to do it for 2 people and not do it for the other 98 people.
The conversation was, can you hold this up until the end of the year to both of these people? Can you keep this up physically, mentally,
Yeah.
when you do these jobs? And they said, I'm going to take a swing at it.
Yeah.
So that was really the consideration.
Yeah.
I hope that no one would ask you to work the hours that are going in right now, and I think it would be ridiculous for us to. And I told both of these gentlemen that I thought it was a pretty big ask, and I asked if they would take it on, and they assured us that they could in this circumstance, basically.
Any other discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes. I'd like to recommend that the board approve additional compensation for David H. Riley, substitute superintendent, that should say, for assuming additional responsibilities in addition to his position of assistant superintendent, retroactive to March 1st, 24 through June 30, 24, or until the return of the superintendent, to be paid an additional $20 a day for each day worked on his calendar, and an additional $5.30 a day for any day worked that is not on his calendar.
Moved. Second.
Discussion? In this one, we were more specific, but same principle. Roll call, please.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
The substitute superintendent recommends the following personnel actions for the 23-24 school year.
Motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
The substitute superintendent recommends the following personnel actions for the 24-25 school year.
Motion?
Moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
And Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
Public comments. This is the point in the meeting where the public is encouraged to join us at the microphone. Please express your views clearly so that we can understand you when you come to the mic. Please state your name and address for the record. Every speaker will get 5 minutes for a total of 30 minutes. Jamie, will you time for me? Thank you.
Thank you. David Perdue, 156 Orchard Street, Geneva. I was on Friday, April 26th, at about 2 o'clock, I was sitting in my office. Luckily, I wasn't in court. I was there, and I got a call from my grandson. He's in the 10th grade here, and he says, "Grandpa, I don't have a ride home." He catches the shuttle bus from here at the high school to the middle school. I said, "Why not?" He said, "Grandpa, there was only 3 buses. There was kids sitting on people's laps, and the bus driver said, 'You can't stay on the bus. We don't have any room. You got to get off.'" Luckily, I was, as I said, in my office. I left my office and came and picked him up and took him to the middle school. Now, I find that totally unsatisfactory that he would have had to walk on Route 84, which is a very dangerous road, to the middle school. Why something couldn't have been done to make sure that he got to that school safely. I'm telling you right now, this board and this school will be responsible if some child has to do that and get hit by a car, or gets killed or injured. It's not acceptable. Period. I thought this bus situation was going to be taken care of. This new board blamed a lot of this on Dr. Treehorn. I'm not here to stick up for her or run interference or say she was good, bad, or indifferent. But I thought it was going to be addressed and taken care of. I called the bus garage 3 different times, 3 different days, and I couldn't even get an answer. Nobody was even at the bus garage. Do you people not afford an answering machine at least? What is going on in this school system? I don't understand it. My taxes still go on every day. Why doesn't the buses get straightened out? That's the first thing. Secondly, my granddaughter, who goes to the junior high, had 3 times they had testing, as Mr. Riley stated, in the last couple weeks. She's had her Chromebook go out 3 times. 3 times. I think it's time that you people invested, instead of hiring a superintendent, another assistant superintendent at $125 an hour. I think maybe you ought to invest in some new Chromebooks for the kids in this school system. Lastly, as I sat here, I listened about the backpack situation. I'd like to comment briefly on that. My granddaughter goes to school and she has a backpack that I've yelled and screamed at her, and I mean, I couldn't carry it, I'll tell you right now, until you're gonna wreck your back, you know, etc. But she wants to take that backpack and does. My question would be, if you limit the kids' backpacks in whatever size or whatever, what's gonna be the penalty? Are you gonna throw kids out of school? You're gonna suspend them or whatever, if it's 20 pounds or 25 pounds or whatever? I think that should be a parent and a child responsibility, the student. She wants to carry that backpack, and if there's nothing that's illegal, which there better not be or whatever, I think that should be between the parent and the student. Now, I understand there's liability if someone falls or whatever. On the other hand, I would rather see her carrying that backpack and whatever and getting to her class on time and not getting in trouble than to get a detention for not being there on time. So I think it's time that the board spend a little more time addressing the students' issues, as Ms. Krieg has said. I was glad to hear what she said, and I think we need to get away. You know, you hired a former superintendent. That was the reason we don't have a complex. You mentioned GV and PV. They have all of their schools and everything else and football fields and whatever. We don't have that because that same superintendent wanted to forego and go out to Spire, and that's what we're stuck with. Now you bring them on board at $125 an hour. I don't understand that. We got a building sitting up here for the last 2 or 3 years, and the only thing it does is house a front end loader. So I think we need to address those issues. Furthermore,
30 seconds.
One last thing, and I'll shut up. One last thing is, I don't understand how you pay Mr. Riley, who I think is doing an excellent job as a substitute superintendent, $530 a day, it says, according to what I just read. But you're going to give someone else $125 an hour, which would be $1,000 a day if my math is still pretty good. I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense to me. And on an annual basis, that's a $260,000 you're giving him if he was to work 40 hours a week.
That's 5 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Really quickly, I know we all want to go home. Amy Wood, 6624 West Maple, Geneva. I just wanted to tell you guys there was a kid that sat back here from high school for quite a while. I just wanted to reiterate what he was trying to tell us back here. When you guys think about the backpack policy, he brought up a really good point. There's books and there's Chromebooks. We all know we need it. We all know there's stuff they need. Pick one. Truly. As a mother, as a person in the schools, you have kids who are doing online work. You have kids who have these books that are this big. My child has them too. 80-pound book bag. I just said it today. Maybe if we should get with our high school teachers and say, what's a good plan for you? If you're gonna stay online, get rid of the book. Put the book in their classroom. You can use it while you're here, but go home and do online. We should be asking our teachers before we're putting this in the contract, no matter what it's for, what could we do to better this for these kids? But he had to go home, obviously, it's getting late, but I feel like I should do my due diligence to say, not just those kids, we need to ask these teachers, these aides, what is your opinion? How could we better this? What can we do to make this easier? That's it, because I feel like he wanted to be heard, but he was not here. So that's it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy.
Thank you, Amy.
Christy Burns, 4262 North County Line Road. Just a couple really quick things. My 2 cents from being in the school and also being a parent with the busing. I think a busing secretary that was an extended time just for the additional 2 hours until every child was home would speak volumes to the community. It would be a very small amount of pay, but it would still give every parent someone they could contact that had contact with a bus. It's something very small. People are just asking for someone to please contact. So I think that would really, really help situations. Second of all, there is something that's going to change a little bit next year, and I think it might be good to get ahead of it. One of the things that's going to change is that water bottles for school at the cafeteria are not going to be coming with the students' lunches anymore. It's going to be, it's not something that's included like a milk is. So that is something that I learned this week. And with that, I just worry because I see so many different children that are in the clinic with headaches and dizziness. And the main cause for that is dehydration. I think one of the biggest things that we can do this summer to get ahead of that is to turn on the water fountains. We're past our COVID era. Some schools have water fountains on, some do not. Some of the schools that got the water fountains that also have the water bottle dispenser on those, they only have access to do one or the other. So when the water bottle dispenser's on, you cannot have the water fountain on. So if we could figure something out with that over the summer, if maintenance could look into that, I think that could be a big thing, especially if water bottle, are not going to come in those lunches, our free and reduced children. And then again, you guys talked about school lunches, and I know that there is a program over the summer months for people that apply that children you're able to get $40 a day for each child put onto an EBT card if they would have had a lunch in school. But they do have to apply for that, so I don't know if it would be good to put out like a mass mailer when we send out our grade cards or something to let these parents know, or if maybe that's already being done, but just from a standpoint, a lot of our students, I think, could probably benefit from that. And then also, if we did like a huge push at the beginning of the school year, people filling out that form for free and reduced lunches, I really do think that we would qualify for a lot of our school, or for our school to get free lunches across the district. If we really did a big push and people realized that if they filled this out, maybe I don't need the free lunch, but it's going to benefit Brock and Mr. Riley if I fill out that form as well. We're in Appalachia County, and it's just known that most people in those counties, you can qualify.
Christy, quick question. And Mr. Riley, is that something we could push out towards the end of the year on the constant contact thing? About filling out the forms and a little bit of an explanation about that so families know, and the water bottle thing too?
We could push it out in constant contact and emails and whatnot. I think communication is big on my end, so whatever we can do to kind of get the word out over the summer months on anything is going to be helpful moving forward.
Especially, and if we could work on those water fountains, I think that would make a huge difference if they're going to have to pay for those.
Are you saying that they're including milk?
So right now, at least at the high school level, there's a sign in front that you get water included with your meal.
Correct.
Okay? It's only supposed to be milk. So that's what it's going to be next year.
And we don't have water fountains that are functional in this building.
Well, and that's why a lot of our children carry around large Stanleys that they spill and put other things in. It would be a huge help if we had these water fountains on.
Thank you very
in
much.
my opinion.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Christy.
Holy
Any other public speakers? Board member reports. Who wants to go first?
I have a few things. So I was excited to receive an invitation to our 2024 prom. My own kids weren't nearly as excited to go as I was, but it was a super fun evening. We got to enjoy a meal, watch the students enjoy themselves. Mrs. Blevins and the junior class did a phenomenal job. So way to go. And I'm a big Gatsby fan, so I absolutely loved the theme this year. So I'm excited to share that a group of my colleagues and I are going to be presenting a learning session at the OSBA's Capital Conference in Columbus this November. Each of us are classroom teachers and board members in the district within which we live. So our title of our presentation is Wearing Dual Hats, Board Members in the Classroom. And we're going to be talking about some things along these lines. The day-to-day of a classroom teacher, pending legislation, impact, the dyslexia, science of reading, and what does Ohio Revised Code really mean for our teachers and students, curriculum and instruction materials to follow up with that, what do we actually teach, student behaviors, what's really happening in our schools, supporting staff and students, what does that actually look like, union membership plus union issues as a board member, which is a real fine line, toxic building culture, which I think is a hot topic right now, community involvement and parent support, board policy, and then just balancing everything together. My district has already told me that I can take the time, but I was wanting to ask if I could have our board pay, or our district pay for my registration fee. So we can talk about that at another time, but we just got approved this earlier this week. I talked about the backpacks already. Went to the Breakfast of Champions this morning. It was wonderful. Mr. Kujala really gave a nice speech. A lot of people have talked about that already. And today I took a personal day to go to the breakfast this morning. And so when I left there, I was able to hit the high school, the middle school, and Cork. So my last day for me is the 24th. So GPS and Austinburg, I'll be heading your way after Memorial Day. I just ran out of time today. So, but that's all I have.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Flash around Geneva Prom. It's very impressed to see our young students able to classify and demarcate different things in song form, such as hotels, motels, and holiday inns. Kudos to you guys. I had some correspondence that I had kind of addressed it with people in the district with multiple roles. So we're going to stay actively seized on looking at that. But those were the two agenda items that we had gone through. Today I was happy to see Mr. Markajon. I stopped in real quick to bug Mrs. Cozy and Mrs. Nugent. Mrs. Cozy, my mother, was asking if I'd bring in my 2-day-old hatched chicks, which were quite the commodity at Austinburg Elementary, which I didn't think would be such a huge thing, because when I was there, I'm pretty sure that they were all raising chickens and goats and what have you out there. So Austinburg needs to toughen up a little bit more, because if John Szymanski was there, he would have had more than I did in the schoolroom. Speaking of which, I wanted to say Anna Szymanski is amazing, one of the coolest people you'll ever meet. It was amazing to see her accept an award. She's super brilliant. The administrators for that, thank you. She is one of the funniest storytellers. She always has something new, some cool fact to share. And the fact that she is the granddaughter of my favorite English teacher, well, one of two of my favorite English teachers, goes a really, really long way, and it was awesome to see. Lastly, I want to thank the people from GATA for making this policy very easy. I think a lot of people were under the assumption that we were headed into dire straits like last time. It had been said that, through the channels that be unofficial, that the union had intended to strike, and I think that both sides came to the table like adults and solved this ahead of time and showed the community that they were in it to win it. We thank you guys very much, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Mrs. Cybulski, anything? Mrs. Ortiz? I have just a couple real quick. I did also go to the choir concert and was going to say about the awards, but Mr. Chenoweth stole my thunder about that. But I'm just so impressed. This was their first competition since COVID, and they got first place in show choir, first place in mixed choir, and overall champion. There were 28, I think, schools competing at Cedar Point, and we came out victorious. So thank you for that, Mrs. Mather, and students. Real quickly, I want to do speak about Paul Dombrowski, our staff member who just passed. He was a beloved member of our community and of our school, and I wanted to remember him for a moment, as well as Pat Scoville. Pat drove a school bus for 29 years here and was a beloved member also of our school community, and I wanted to mention her passing as well. And that's all I have. Anybody else have anything? Okay. The board will hold an executive session for a lot of things. To consider the appointment, employment, discipline, or compensation of a public employee, the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, conferences with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending or imminent court action, and preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Again, in real language, we are talking about, what are we talking about? Hiring a treasurer. We are talking about current discipline issues, grievances, and the OPSI bargaining, where we are with that, since we wrapped up GATA today. So I think that covers our executive session. So I need a motion to enter into.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? We will not be doing any business upon our return. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
Mr. Pierson?
Yes.
Mrs. Cybulski?
Yes.
And Mrs. Krieg?
Yes.
Thank you all. High school students that stuck it out.